On Odyssey Sports Station. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Live from downtown San Francisco, this is 95.7 The Game.
And a good morning to one and all. A little overcast on a Saturday here in San Francisco. A couple of days after the fact, the San Francisco 49ers at the 500 mark, 3-3, sit atop the NFC West. I'm joined by my man Sterling Bennett. Sterling, what's going on with you this morning?
It's going well. The wife's out of town. It's me and the pooch. We're having a good day. Celebrating the Niners win on Thursday. Yeah, it's great. Sun's out here in Hesperia, California, all the way down here near Las Vegas. So the sun's out. The dog's having a good time, and I hope you're having a good time too, Dan.
That's right. You're in that witness protection program. Where the hell are you these days?
Yeah, I'm in Hesperia, California, in between Barstow and Rancho Cucamonga, middle of the desert, witness protection, and got nobody out here that knows where I'm at. It is almost the perfect recluse style that I like to live, so we're having some fun.
You're not one of those part of a militia group out there that's looking to take over the world, are you? What kind of dog are we talking about, Sterling?
He's like a lab mix. He's definitely a mutt for sure. He's a pound dog. But no militia style here. We may have the Costco, Judgment Day, whatever you want to call it, packs ready to go in case the world goes to hell. But no militia style here. Okay,
really quick, before we get into the 49ers, let's talk about things that are obviously a little bit more pressing and important. You mentioned Costco. The pizza and the hot dog at Costco, a bit overrated in my estimation, or no? Where are you at with the Costco hot dog?
It's still $1.50. I mean, it's a deal. Let's be honest, Dan. You go to Costco, you're buying in bulk, you get your chicken, you get your meat, you get whatever else you're going to buy. You're sitting there, you're just seeing the price go up and up and up, and you go, I spent $500 on food. $1.50 for a hot dog that may not be that great, doesn't sound too bad right now. So I am all pro for the Costco hot dog and pizza.
Yeah, I'm telling you, there are people that swear by that dog. They're like, Dan, I'm telling you, you get the best pizza slices at Costco, and I've tried it, and I'm like, you're drunk.
Well,
that is
now
not
you
correct.
have the Costco family with the double chunk chocolate cookies and the chicken bacon, the Rizzler, and Big Justice. There's Costco families now on social media.
Costco is like you're getting ready for the end of the world. Like, do you really need that much mayonnaise? It's crazy stuff. All right. One thing that we got a lot of course, on Thursday with the San Francisco 49ers coming up with that win over Seattle. I just want to get your initial thoughts. Were you impressed? Are they back? Or are you one of those that's like, I need to see more because, let's face it, Seattle still was within striking distance in the closing moments of that game. How'd you see it, Sterling?
Are they back? No. Was it a good win, though? Yes. You're 3-3. You're in first place in the NFC West, for now at least, depending on what the Cardinals do tomorrow. You had to get it. Your back's against the wall. It's a short week. You're banged up. If you lose that game, you're 2-4. You've lost 3 consecutive NFC West games. You're 0-3 in the division, and the odds you win that division are basically in the dump. You can't be there. And San Francisco said, you know what? We're going to go in, Lumen Field, short week, hostile crowd, and we're going to put up 36 points against Seattle. Was it perfect? No, but I don't know how you leave that game not somewhat impressed with what San Francisco did.
So, of course, you do the post-game show. I'm curious, taking the pulse of the fans afterwards. Look, we all know there's overreaction, the ebb and flow from week to week, but what was sort of the sentiment collectively, if you could sort of sum it up in terms of where the fans are at?
Funny enough, it was kind of a mixed bag, right? Some fans were excited. They were like, yes, finally, you beat Seattle. Anytime you go into Seattle and win, that's a big deal for this team. It's been a house of horrors for 25-plus years.
Well, not lately, because the Seahawks, and especially Purdy, has pretty much owned that team. But go ahead.
They've won 6 consecutive games, but even then, there's been some diciness. 2019, Dre Greenlaw's big tackle at the goal line. But yes, in recent years, it's been a trouncing of the Seahawks, if you will. But fans were like, it was a great win. You're in Seattle. You got the win. You're banged up. Great. Whereas some fans, and one of them more particular, was like, this is what we're happy about? Like, you almost lost this game. It was 23-17, a one-score game, and had it not been for an interception, you could have lost. And so I do think that the fan base, the way the year started, being up and down roller coaster ride, I think are somewhat jaded because of the expectations coming into the season of Super Bowl or bust. You should be 5-0 at this point, 6-0 at this point, but nobody's like that. The Chiefs have squeaked out victories left and right. The Vikings have looked like the best team in football, which we all know that the gas is probably going to run out eventually with Minnesota. So definitely a mixed bag from Niner fans after the win on Thursday.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? The Minnesota Vikings undefeated along with Kansas City. And right now, if you were to rate the 2 top quarterbacks out of the NFC, it would have to be Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy. Maybe not necessarily in that order. And just to think that this time a year ago, they were both on that 49er roster
right.
just goes to show you that San Francisco had some depth a year ago. I do want to talk about Brock Purdy because I firmly believe that this guy has established himself as one of the premier quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, I know I may be overstating the obvious, but I like to think of myself as sort of a perfect example of somebody that's been slow to the party when it comes to Brock Purdy, and maybe I speak for a lot of people. I know that there are some that the minute they saw him, like, oh, Brock Purdy, yes, this is the guy. I saw a quarterback that was, and still is, barely 6 feet on a good day. The optics just bothered me with this guy, and I'll admit it. You know, that should not factor into anybody's decision, but it did. I see this guy, and I'm like, he looks like somebody out of Iowa State that played for 4 years. He looks like somebody that was in the 7th round and was the last player chosen. And quite frankly, I don't want those kind of guys quarterbacking my team. I want somebody who's 6'4" coming off the plane that is an perennial All-American that went to a blue blood like that of USC, Texas, LSU, or Alabama. So I think a lot of this, Sterling, is just, it's the visual hurdle a lot for a lot of people, including myself. Would you agree? Would you say that there's something there to any of that?
Sometimes the world views quarterbacks the way John Elway wanted to, where they got to be 6'7". They have to have a chiseled jawline. They have to have the long flowing hair and be able to go out there and stand out in the crowd. And Brock Purdy doesn't do that. He's a J.C. Penney catalog model. He's got the sweaters on. He's a shorter guy. He's humble. He goes to Iowa and shucks corn during the bye week. He's not a guy you point to and say, that's my franchise quarterback. But funny enough, despite all of those things, despite the media saying he ain't the guy, despite not having the greatest arm talent or the fastest 40 time, he wins almost every single week. He's played at an MVP level for about a year and a half now, although this year's been, probably his best year so far, despite losing 3 games. When I watched Brock Purdy for the first time, admittedly, it was in training camp. It was Trey Lance, Jimmy G's on the side field, and you kind of just go, hey, Brock Purdy, 7th round pick. What is he doing here? Right? He's not going to make this team, but that's the Brock Purdy story, right? He's not big enough. He's not strong enough. 7th round pick, and he defies all those odds And continually, whether it's us or the media nationally says he's not good enough, continues to prove he's more than good enough to win big games.
Yeah, you talked about Brock Purdy during a bye week or the offseason, the guy shucking corn, which leads me to this. What the hell is this guy going to do with a $60 million contract? Just like, how many John Deeres can you buy?
He has the deal now, so he doesn't have to buy him at all.
Does he really?
Yeah,
he has an endorsement with John Deere.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I'm at with this guy. And again, I hope for maybe I speak for some of you out there that are listening this morning when we talk about Brock Purdy. When I saw this guy, I'm like, yeah, that's maybe an abridged to whoever it is that you're going to pull out of the draft in the next couple of years, or maybe a free agent you're going to bring to San Francisco. And quite frankly, at the time on the record saying, as soon as Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy, put him back into the lineup. But Brock Purdy then just grew on me. I'm like, okay, this guy can go through his progression. Maybe he doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's smart, and he knows where to go, and he's not going to lose you games. And then going into this season, I said, no, Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. Like, I gradually came along, but I still qualified it at he's a system quarterback. But there's nothing wrong with that because he happens to be running. Well, no, because I qualified it, Sterling, by saying, yeah, that's okay because he happens to be running the best system in the NFL. Right. It's Kyle Shanahan's system. So if you're running that system, that's fine. And Kyle Shanahan has been in search of this guy for his entire tenure here with San Francisco over the last 7 years. And now he has the best player since he's been in San Francisco to execute and be the architect of his innovative offense. So the system works. And I think he was a system quarterback. And if it's Kyle Shanahan, well, who the hell cares if you're a system quarterback because you're going to win Super Bowls. And now he's not a system quarterback.
No.
This dude is doing it on his own. This guy is buying time. He is running with the football. He's playing. What was the one knock on him? Okay, what are you going to do when you don't have Debo? What are you going to do when you don't have Kittle? Right. Brandon Ayuk's not there. Well, all those guys have been out, including Christian McCaffrey. And what he does is that he's buying time, waiting for guys to get separation. And he's about as close to a one-man show this side of Patrick Mahomes that you're going to find in the NFL. So I've gone from a guy that I don't want to be my quarterback to like he's okay, he's a system quarterback, to now he's right up there in the conversation with Patrick Mahomes.
Well, it's funny enough that, well, I wouldn't go that high for Brock Purdy. I do think we have seen that with Brock. You've seen the growth being kind of played out as the games go by. Year one, comes in against the Dolphins. Jimmy G hurts the ankle. Season looks lost. Nick Bosa said himself, I thought it was over. Brock comes out and plays a heck of a game against one of the best teams at the time, wins that one, then beats Tom Brady, then goes with broken or bruised ribs into Seattle, short week, and wins that game. You start to see, okay, this kid has something to him, and now you fast forward 2.5 years to, Brock is no longer, or should no be longer categorized as a system quarterback. Yes, there are things he struggles with, as all quarterbacks do, but what Brock Purdy has been able to do has been transcendent for one of the greatest offensive systems in the current NFL. And you can't say that for players like Jimmy Garoppolo, who was good in his own right, but had a lot of hindrances in how he plays. I know he's your guy, Dan. But even then, Brock's outplaying guys like Trevor Lawrence and Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins, guys that have already been given these massive contracts or were drafted number 1 overall. Brock Purdy walked into a situation where he was the 4th quarterback in the room, outplayed the incumbent vet starter, outplayed the number 3 overall pick, and outplayed the vet that was given guaranteed money in front of him. So what Brock Purdy has done has defied every logical take you were supposed to have when he got here. And again, while it's not been perfect so far this year, there have been some hiccups here and there, some turnovers against the Cardinals and whatnot, but he has taken over an offensive system that was already scoring 26, 28 points a game and said, you know what? There's a level we haven't even reached yet. Let's go that far with it. And that's what Brock Purdy's done.
Yeah, I would admit, and I'm with you, I think that game against Arizona might have been one of his worst as a starter. He just wasn't Brock Purdy, and he bounced back against Seattle clearly the other night.
Yeah. And
not only was he hitting guys, that dime he dropped to Kittle in the corner of the end zone. Like, that is, who makes that throw? Beyond the outstretched arms of love. I mean, it was just so, you could not walk it to George Kittle and place it in his hands any better than where it is that he threw that dime. It's funny, we're talking and giving him a hard time. Like, what's he going to do with all that money sitting on a farm out in Iowa? You know what he's got to do? He's got to come up. So everybody has their own clothing line, like Serena Williams, but it's always athletic apparel, right? So my suggestion to Brock Purdy is that you get the first cool farming clothing line, right? Like something that's bring back fleece, get the
some
new
overalls,
cap.
some flannels.
Get the flannels, but have it designed so it's a way that it's like, it's got street cred. That's where you go with that first, with that 60. And I think, Sterling, correct me if I'm wrong, and you may think I'm high at 9:15 in the morning. I am not. I'll do the blood test. I'll pee into a cup right now, but I'll tell you that this man there could be a 7-digit in front of that contract, meaning 70 plus next year. We'll have to wait and see. But that's my first suggestion, is go get a cool clothing line and have it being farming apparel. Your thoughts?
Well, and if you're lucky, you get Nick Bosa, who already is doing the skim ads for Kim Kardashian. You get Bosa with the nice flannel, the shirt untucked, their abs out. Those things will sell like hotcakes. I mean, there is a way for Brock Purdy to make millions off of flannels and John Deere-sponsored clothing lines. And also, look, farming boys are in now. Country boys are in. This is a market Brock Purdy might have to tap into sooner rather than later.
Spoken like a true kid from Oklahoma, baby.
There you go.
Speaking of George Kittle and Juszczyk, did you have any issues with him jumping in and hugging the wife? I mean, I did it once. You know how people online get, they're like, okay, that was too much to see it a second and a third time. That was overkill. Where are you at?
I mean, if you don't want him to celebrate, don't let them score. I mean, like, come on. It's like baseball, right? You don't want to see a bat flip or the pitcher yelling on the mound. Get a base hit, get a strikeout, get the guy out, Dodger fans are going to be angry at Tatis and Machado doing things. Get those guys out. Did last night, but I digress. Who cares? If Claire and Kristen want to sit in the front row, watch their husbands play, wouldn't you expect their husbands to give them a shout out at a certain point during the game? That happens in high school baseball when the girlfriends are there, when they're not going to last more than 2 months. They're like, that's my girl in the corner. And you're like, okay, buddy, call me in 2 months. Your wife's out there. Go in the stands for all I care.
I was on the sidelines when Terrell Owens pulled out the Sharpie gate. He had a Sharpie and a pen in his sock the entire game, signed the football. Awesome move. But I was on the sideline, so I do not want to hear it from Seahawk fans that was overkill when it comes to extracurricular activities after scoring a touchdown. But just getting back to the San Francisco 49ers, there's a lot of pressure. And we know statistically trying to get back to that Super Bowl after losing one and winning it, it's only happened once in the history of the Super Bowl, that being the New England Patriots. After getting beaten by Philadelphia, they went back the following year and somehow beat the Rams despite scoring just 13 points. But that's the only time it's happened. And so we understand the pressure the 49ers are under. And it's not going to look good. And I said this before the beginning of the season. It's going to be a struggle. And so to your point that if you want this team to be perfect out of the gates, I never thought it was going to happen. This has never changed. And this is applicable to anybody that's sniffing a wild card or is in the conversation of potentially getting out of their conference and getting to a Super Bowl this year, which includes maybe, 5 or 6 teams right now, 7 teams?
Yeah.
You got to peak at the right time. And that's always been the case. And so, I know you do a post-game show and everybody overreacts and you take the temperature of the people and we're all emotional when it comes to these sort of things. But you eradicate those mistakes and you just want to be hitting your stride when it comes to the time when you've got to take out that parka or you're putting on the hoodie for the first time this year or throwing on the scarf and the gloves, meaning when the calendar turns and it's December or it's January, that's when you need to be healthy. That's when you got to be playing your best football. So everything, as far as I'm concerned, September has now just become an extended preseason. What's up is down, what's down is up. Who the hell knows? I would never bet on football games in September. It's meaningless. And now you're beginning to see, just as we get into October, okay, who are the pretenders and who are the contenders? People are beginning to rear their head. And I think that this is going to be a sojourn for San Francisco as Brock Purdy continues to grow with confidence, the emergence and the blend of these established veterans, and now the rookies, that San Francisco is in a good position despite everybody saying that it was the end of the world, the end of the run as far as the Niners were concerned.
I don't know why anybody would say it was the end of the run. Yeah, it's been tough. There's been some games you should have won, the Rams game being the biggest example of that, the Cardinals game also in that group. But the NFL's tough. Sometimes people forget, with the stacked roster, it doesn't matter how many injuries or guys that goes down, like you're going to be undefeated. That's not going to happen. This defense has a new defensive coordinator. They have 4 starters not playing right now. They have to have rookies step up and make big plays, which they did against Seattle on Thursday. But then the offense hasn't found their rhythm. The red zone offense has been rather atrocious through 5-6 games so far this year. But, the Vikings are undefeated. Are the Vikings going to be a team you're scared about in the playoffs? Maybe, if they continue. But what are the odds that continues? And they're 7-0. They're 10-0. That's not going to happen. Some teams are going to get hot. Some teams are going to get, cold at the right or wrong times. And so I go back to last year, the Packers, right? Everyone overhyped Jordan Love coming into the year, and I think he can be a great quarterback, but they got hot at the right time. Second half, Jordan Love was a top 5 quarterback in football. They walk into Jerry World in Dallas and just take it to the Cowboys. Almost beat San Francisco as well. So it's not as if San Francisco, at this moment, it's more of just survive. Yeah, you want to thrive. Of course you do. You can get a first round bye if you're the number 1 seed. But while fans, I think, have maybe bought into the Christian McCaffrey savior of the season mentality too much, there is something to that. Okay, after the bye week, you get out there, you're 4-4, you're 5-4, whatever it may be. You're in Tampa Bay on a Sunday. You get CMC back. You hit your stride in the last 2 months of the year. Well, maybe you are a top 4 seed. Maybe you are the number 1 seed again, and you're hosting 2 or 3 playoff games. There is a world where San Francisco's early season struggles, although it can come back to bite them, no one's even talking about those in 4 months.
You mentioned Christian McCaffrey coming back. Really? Do you think he's coming back this year?
I have been on the keep him off the field as long as possible, because when you have bilateral Achilles tendonitis, that thing can flare up at any time. Doesn't matter the game, the day. You sleep wrong. Oh, my calf. Oh, my Achilles. I can't play today, coach. And so it's I want to see him back. He's a reigning offensive player of the year for a reason. But even if it takes until December, Christmas Day, whatever it may be for him, he just has to be back for the playoffs. That's all I care about. That is the most important time of the year. And if you want to win it all and you get CMC back, look out rest of the NFL, because this team should be reaching their stride then.
When I hear Achilles and
it's
everything
scary.
that he's dealing with, the only remedy is rest. And then you could rest for months and get out on the field, and then all of a sudden it hurts. So whether he comes back, I don't think anybody knows. And I hate to go here, but the career could be hanging in the balance. I'm probably not saying anything that people haven't already thought about. But I think that Christian McCaffrey, in terms of counting on him and him being one of those guys when you, quote unquote, as I said, peak, I think it's going to be Jordan Mason. It's going to be a lot of Isaac Guerrero, a guy that you pointed out. Remember, I did a show with you. Remember that back in the day before? I as hell said, what? What are you? Is that Swahili? What's Isaac Guerrero? What is that? And it was my man Sterling Bennett who knows that draft as well as anybody. And you said, watch out. This kid kind of fits the mode of what the 49ers want to do. And, of course, out of Louisville, here he comes, and he's been a huge star. Why don't we just stay with the running back scenario? Because, again, and I do want to talk about there was an interesting point made out on the text line about, is it the system or the quarterback? And I want to address that in a matter of moments. But speaking of which, is it the system or is it the running back when it comes to the 49ers? Because now we're getting to number 4 and 5 on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And Isaac Guerrero and Patrick Taylor, and it's as though you're not missing a beat. What do you think?
I think more so than the quarterback, the running back is a system running back. Now, Christian McCaffrey is his own beast and animal. You saw him take off in this offense, but also he was great before even getting to San Francisco. But we've seen even pre-Christian McCaffrey. You had Matt Breida and Tevin Coleman and Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert and guys that were undrafted free agents that bounced around to 7 different practice squads. And now this year, Jordan Mason, Isaac Guerrero, 4th-round pick, Patrick Taylor, a special teamer that was on the Packers last year. They didn't bring him back. Now he's playing well in prime time for Kyle Shanahan. So I think, if anything, you want to talk about system quarterbacks, I think Kyle Shanahan's system is a system running back system. Like, anybody can go back there and have success. It's crazy.
When we talk about Kyle Shanahan, it really is handed down from Mike Shanahan, the secret sauce, and Bobby Turner. I don't know who came up with this, but this is It's
perfect.
It's a family secret. You know, when you go to someone's house for Thanksgiving and they put on that gravy or they bring out that side dish, and you're like, holy crap, never had that before. And it's just something that is specific, I think, to the Shanahans. And again, listen, I don't want to sound like Bobby Turner. I don't want to sound like one of those coconuts that's pretending that he plays running back. But a lot of it is just, at least from somebody who's sitting on a couch like the other fat asses and just watching a game, it looks like you need patience. You know, you just, especially with that stretch zone to the outside, just be patient and wait for that thing to pop so you can cut it back. And I think Isaac Guerrero, it's just reps, right? Like anything else.
Yeah.
And Patrick Taylor, it's just you need reps and just the ability to wait on those blocks and then be able to get into that rhythm like that of Jordan Mason. But you're right. I think it's a system, and it's been a proven system. Hey, look back in the day when Shanahan, and I'm talking about Shanahan Sr., Mike Shanahan, and Bobby Turner had that thing going with Denver, they would turn out 1,000, and I'm talking 1,000-yard rushers by the year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just Terrell Davis. It was Mike Anderson, and the list went on. I mean, it was guys that were sort of, one-hit wonders, but getting an opportunity to do it in Denver. And the same holds true now some 10, 15 years later with the 49ers, that I'm with you, that if you're going to miss a star, you don't want you don't want Christian McCaffrey not available to you. You're just not as good of a football team. But because it's the running back position, I'm still comfortable that they can get to and win a Super Bowl and not have it be the deterrent, or at the end of the year, I do not think, and I said this as soon as he went down, that while he makes the team better, he's not going to be the reason why the 49ers do not win that Super Bowl. This has been proven. Think about the last time they went to a Super Bowl back in 2019 and played Kansas City. They did it with three different guys. It was Coleman, it was Breida, it was Mostert, and it just depended on whoever it is that had the hot hand. And so as much as you want McCaffrey, the 49ers are going to be okay running the ball. In terms of catching it and the checkdowns and what it is that he could do as being that other wide receiver, well, that's certainly going to be missed. But I think you're going to be okay as far as running backs are concerned and the absence as it relates to one Christian McCaffrey.
I think McCaffrey is missed in the red zone more than anything, but I mean, this team has been successful no matter who's in the backfield across from the quarterback. Jordan Mason's now injured. Does that change? But go back to Thursday night's game for Guerrero as an example. It was kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole for a little bit because he wasn't being patient. And I think for Kyle, he will preach to his running backs, just trust my system. Trust the blocks and the holes are going to be there for you. And late in the game, you got to get a first down, first play. Boom, 76-yard, massive run. Whether he slid or got tackled, whatever it was, Guerrero iced that game essentially for San Francisco because he was patient, because he trusted that Pooney and McKivitz and Brent would open up the hole for him. So, like you said, with reps comes success in a Kyle Shanahan system. So the outlook for running back to me hasn't changed. Now, 10 days should be enough for Mason to get healthy, hopefully against Kansas City. But my concern has never been the running game for San Francisco. It's when you have your successful running game and you're passing the ball well, can you actually put the ball in the end zone? That hasn't happened outside of Thursday against Seattle, so fingers crossed those things continue in the right direction as well.
We'll talk about the red zone and the red zone success, especially in that second half with George Kittle getting in a couple of times and Brock Purdy making the connection. We'll detail the 49ers really quick before we get to the break. So if you wanted, I don't know, a cup of sugar, your neighbors out in, because I've never lived in the burbs, like, do you have to get on your little tractor and go a half mile and find somebody, or can you just walk a couple of feet?
It's about a chain link fence around the corner. It's not that far, but I will say we have no sidewalks. It's all dirt. It's dirt patches. There's horses out here. There's stray dogs running around looking for something else to do. But no, there are neighbors right next door to us for sure.
Wow, man, that's good living out there, I suppose. And don't worry, man. I know you're in that witness protection plan. I'll never give you up. Stay out there. All right, we continue. Sterling Bennett from God knows where, and somewhere in the you're in California still, right?
Oh, yeah, SoCal.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk to Sterling Bennett some more about the 49ers, continue to break it down, and we'll get into, I do want to talk about what the 925 brought up. And is it the quarterback that makes the system, or is it the other way around? And and we'll apply that to the 49ers. And we continue here on 95.7 The Game.
Hey, it's Willard and Dibbs for Safeway. Enjoy these amazing deals.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Sterling Bennett and Devone, my man Cam producing, Steven Risotto also alongside as we continue to talk about the San Francisco 49ers. We'll see where things take us, and maybe we can get into some postseason baseball.
Oh.
Things still undecided out there in the ALCS, but the NLCS, oh, come on, Metropolitans. It's the new OMG Mets taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. And, of course, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody out there, but whoever it is that the Dodgers are playing, I certainly get a cheer for that other team. And that being the Mets.
Oh, yeah.
And the Mets being a remarkable story this year. I mean, I was in on the Mets a long time ago. So I hope they kick the crap out of the Dodgers. And the Dodgers will fold, as they do every year, despite having the ridiculous payroll. But
were you a Lindor for MVP guy?
Yeah, I was. But
okay.
I mean,
he was great this year.
Yeah, he is silly. Lindor has really changed things. And by the way, his backup, baby Acuna's little brother, is also very, very talented.
Luis Angel?
Yeah, the Mets have it going this year. They are, it's just one of those teams. This happens every year. It was Arizona last year. It just sometimes we talk about peaking, right? And towards the end of the season, especially, again, when you're talking about the national pastime, that being Major League Baseball, sometimes someone just comes down from the baseball heavens and touches you on the forehead and anoints you as being that team. And the comebacks and just the confidence now that's on that team. That's going to be a fun series. I think it's going to be fun to see Shohei as we go along here, even if that Dodgers do get to the World Series, to see him in front of the bright lights. Meanwhile, his counterpart out in the American League, that being Aaron Judge, taking the pipe, man, he hasn't been very good. But
he's been terrible.
We'll do a lot more of that as we get into some Major League Baseball a little bit later in the show. But just want to stay with the San Francisco 49er talk for a moment here. As I mentioned, as we went to the break, the 925 on the text line said, the quarterback makes the system. It's not the other way around. Just see in Miami with Tua out. And obviously with Tua out, suddenly it's over. All right? The Miami Dolphins have no shot. And it was a team with so much promise that has just about everything, right? A good offensive line. We talked about Mostert. They got a running game. They've got Tyreek Hill, arguably the best wide receiver in the game. It's a good defense, good enough to win. But you just remove one piece, and now suddenly it's a team that's not even sniffing the playoffs. I think, though, when you talk about the 49ers and a system, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, as much as I love him, he didn't take the Las Vegas Raiders to a Super Bowl, but he certainly did with the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan got Nick Mullins paid in this league. C.J. Beathard.
Still around. Out loud.
Yeah, he's out there, I want to say, in Minnesota. Is he still backing up our man Sam Darnold? C.J. Beathard was relevant for a couple of weeks. So I'll put it to you.
He backed up Trevor Lawrence last year.
Is it the system and or is it the quarterback? How do you see things as it relates to the 49ers?
It might be the boring answer, but why can't it be both? For some quarterbacks, let's take Tua Tagovailoa, for example. Tua is a good quarterback. Hope he's healthy, does what he can to keep himself upright or, alive. He's, the head injuries are scary, but the drop-off from Tua to Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley, that's a catastrophic fall from grace. Like, those are terrible quarterbacks that I know Tyler Huntley's a former Pro Bowler, if you will, but he probably shouldn't be in the league, and he wasn't until the quarterback injuries happened. Whereas San Francisco was in the exact same situation with Brock Purdy, right? Jimmy G goes down, Trey Lance goes down, and obviously Tua's better than those quarterbacks for sure, but Brock Purdy steps up, and he's that quarterback 3 and takes the offense to new heights. But that doesn't take away from Kyle Shanahan's system being great. There's a reason why 10, 19 plus teams want to emulate that. They want to try to steal that system and make it their own. McVay, McDaniel, O'Connell, the teams that usually have success in the NFL are Shanahan-style schemes. But that is to say that Brock Purdy is probably the best quarterback playing in one not named Matthew Stafford. What Brock has done, while yes, is in a great system, he also has made that system better and more explosive and just more efficient in his last 2.5 years. So does Tom Brady make Belichick's system, make McDaniel's system, or did those guys make Tom Brady? We saw what happened once Brady left. It was a quarterback. That was the biggest issue. But Mac Jones also had success for 1 year in that exact same system. So I think it's a boring answer, but the answer is both. The answer is both.
I think that again, just to reiterate what I said earlier, that the perfect quarterback to run Kyle Shanahan's system is Brock Purdy, and Kyle Shanahan knows this. He's been in search of who's going to be my trigger man. I tried Jimmy Garoppolo. He had limitations. I wanted Trey Lance to work. It never got off the ground. He's been through multiple quarterbacks, and finally he stumbles on his guy, and that is the best guy to execute what it is that Kyle Shanahan wants to do. And what's so funny about the conversation as to whether he's going to get paid, all the talk about Colin Cowherd and the Nick Wrights of the world, that he's not a top-tier quarterback. He's not a good quarterback. You can't put him in the conversation. Who the hell cares? If he's the best to execute Kyle Shanahan does not necessarily want a guy who's going to get back there and just rip it. He wants a guy who's going to stay within what it is that he wants executed, which is why he coveted someone like that of a Kirk Cousins. He does not necessarily need all the bells and whistles. But guess what? While he thought he was getting a system quarterback who was going to execute what it is that Kyle Shanahan wants to do in terms of his X's and O's, he got himself a guy that can also be a gunslinger. That when that system breaks down, it's not just throw it away and live to see another day. This guy is, dare I say, he looks like a young Aaron Rodgers. And I know I'm biting off a lot there. But just think about Aaron Rodgers 5 years ago when he was the MVP. Or think about Aaron Rodgers when he took them to
a young 35-year-old Aaron Rodgers.
Well, okay, go back in the day when he went to that Super Bowl in Dallas and came up with his only Super Bowl victory. What did Aaron Rodgers do? Aaron Rodgers could run with the ball, certainly, but he would throw from different platforms. Now, he had maybe one of arguably the greatest release in the game and all of that sort of stuff that we pay attention to. But Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger used to just buy time. It was very subtle, but he would just shift a foot to his left, a foot to his right, move up in that pocket, or get to the outside. They always talk about throwing from different platforms. The guy doing it better than anybody right now is Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is extending plays like nobody else in the National Football League, and that has nothing, and I reiterate, nothing to do with the system. Where this guy is taking his game and where he's taking the 49ers, because let's face it, he's limited. Some of these guys, because of the injuries, aren't getting separation, the Chris Conleys of the world and the Juwan Jennings. So he has to buy more time. And the big question on him was, okay, what's going to happen when we can't afford to bring back Kittle, or Kittle loses a step, or Debo goes next year? What are you going to be then, Brock Purdy? Well, I think he's answering that question for everybody concerned. He'll be fine. The Niners will be fine. Why? Because this guy, despite being a 7th-round pick out of Iowa State and all those optics bothering somebody like me, has now convinced someone like myself that this guy is not only good, but he's legitimate and is worthy of being in the conversation of the best quarterbacks in the game.
I'll push back a little bit and say that Josh Allen and CJ Stroud are probably having better years than Brock Purdy. But yeah, I think.
Who was the first quarterback you mentioned? Sorry.
Josh Allen and CJ Stroud. Both those guys are having a great year. I know Josh Allen has the hero ball issues and loses games for his teams. But one game out of the 5 he's played, he's looked pretty good. But I will say that when people talk about system quarterbacks, the one thing they'll say is, well, what is he if he goes elsewhere? In a different system, different OC, the weapons that Brock Purdy has lift him up, which undoubtedly they do. That's fine. That's no one's fault. It's not Brock's fault. But, we saw him in the Rams game where he didn't have Debo, didn't have Kittle, didn't have CMC, and late in that game, had it not been for a Ronnie Bell drop pass or a Jake Moody missed field goal, they win that game. And, those are big-time throws he's made to put San Francisco in the position to win. But, I think we are past the point of thinking Brock can't succeed elsewhere in the off chance he leaves. If Brock plays elsewhere, whether it's Minnesota, whether it is in Houston, if it's in Philadelphia, I think he would succeed. Like, Brock is to a point of no longer do we talk about, well, if he plays XYZ place not in San Francisco, I think he'll thrive. He's thriving now with the weapons he has. He's thriving now with the weapons he doesn't have. So Is Brock the elite of the elite? I don't think so. I don't think Brock is as good as Mahomes. I don't think on a great day he's good as Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, and at times Josh Allen can be the best quarterback in the NFL, but Brock is certainly in that conversation of 6 through 10 in my opinion. He's played that good this year. Yeah,
I would say he's knocking on that door, if not in that conversation. And again, if Brock Purdy was 6 foot, doing the exact same thing, but let's just say he was 6'4" and went to USC, I think he'd already be in that conversation. I think that he wouldn't be pimping out John Deere equipment. He'd be the front guy for Nike or give me any top brand. A lot of this just begins and ends of the fact that he looks like Case Keenum or that he looks like Nick Mullins. And a lot of us have to get, and I was one of those. And now I'm beginning to think that he's a small quarterback, but guess what? He's like Y.A. Tittle. Or he's like Fran Tarkenton. Wow. These guys predate me. I never saw him play, but I'm just saying that he's now becoming a guy that is small, but is great. And it's, obviously I'm getting ahead of myself, but he's breaking down some barriers here. And as a result, this man is going to get paid next year. Let's open up the phone lines officially. 888-957-9570 if you want to join us. Let's get out to our man Austin, who's standing by. Austin, who's taken the last couple of weeks off. Where you been, Austin? Welcome back.
What's up, my brother? Thanks, Dan. Thanks for your buddy there. Listen, for letting me on. I got to come at you a little bit. I think that Brock. I was like you. I had a lot of doubts about Brock, and I still don't see him as elite. I see him as a very good quarterback. But I'm not ready to put him in the elite category. And you mentioned Rodgers in the same sentence as Brock. I mean, come on, let's pump the brakes. I mean, listen. Has the kid had a good 2 years? Yeah, sure. Has he won some big games? Yeah, but Aaron Rodgers. I mean, listen. I know Aaron Rodgers is age now, but come on, man. This dude was a 4-time MVP or something. I mean, let's just wait. Let's just see what Brock becomes, and is he good for the? I think he still is a system quarterback. I keep asking people who's going to pay Brock $50 million. I know your partner said. He thinks a lot of teams would, I guess. I'm not in that camp. I don't believe that. I think for the 49ers, he's worth the money, but I'm not sure he's worth that money outside of 49ers. I think that's where interesting conversation. And again, I could be sold otherwise, but right now I'm saying, hey, and Dan, how about my guy Commanders? How about my Daniels guy? Man, I mean, he's
that's good.
I mean, it's early. Listen, I'm trying to. I'm a Commanders long line. Where we've been the last few years, so I'm trying to keep my composure. But right now, kid looks pretty damn good, man. So I'm hoping you can start talking about Daniels in the same conversation, maybe going forward. All right,
hey,
guys,
Austin.
I'll keep listening. Thanks.
Yeah.
Austin, what would Brock have to do to prove to you that he's worth that $50, $60 million? He's not a system quarterback, if you will.
I think we lost him.
We lost him.
Maybe you can answer that question, Sterling.
Well, I mean, so a lot of people online would say, well, he hasn't won the big one yet. And I'd point to, well, some guys you consider elite haven't even gotten to the big one. Josh Allen's never been there. Lamar Jackson's never been there. Joe Burrow got there and lost to Matthew Stafford. Only 4 active quarterbacks that are starting this year have won Super Bowls. Mahomes, Rodgers, Stafford, and Joe Flacco, who was a backup before last week. So it's not like what Brock hasn't done hasn't been uber impressive. I wouldn't put him in the young Aaron Rodgers camp, but he's playing like a non-Super Bowl winning Russell Wilson thus far with a worse arm. But even Brock's arm has gotten better through 2.5 years of playing. Is he elite? I wouldn't go that far, but what Brock's done success-wise has been on par, if not better, than quarterbacks we call the elites.
I think he's elite. And let me just clarify for the record what it is that I'm saying when I compare him to a young Aaron Rodgers. Can Aaron Rodgers throw a better ball? Yes. And I mentioned that. His release is probably one of a kind. Or Brock Purdy doesn't have that. And his accuracy, his ability to throw just about every pass on the route tree, Aaron Rodgers can do it. And again, with remarkable fluidity, that is not Brock Purdy. The comparison that I want to make between him, and I'll stand by it, is that a young Aaron Rodgers, I'm not talking about throwing the football, I'm talking about buying time. The reason why Aaron Rodgers is a mere shadow of himself in 2024 as this reclamation project with out of the New York Jets and why it's not going to work is because he can no longer do that. Aaron Rodgers was at his most dangerous when he would get and extend a play or get to another platform or get outside of that pocket. As soon as he sees pressure, much like that of Tom Brady when he got to the wrong side of 40, he's going down, all right? Or if there's pressure, he's throwing high. He doesn't have that same comfort as he once did. The comparison I'm making is with him. I'll even throw Ben Roethlisberger in there, that what you're watching from Brock Purdy in terms of extending plays, and not like that of Lamar Jackson, because Brock Purdy isn't looking, okay, the play is now broken down. I went through my progression. Time for me to run. Yeah. Running is the last option. What he's doing is looking to buy time so that his receivers can get separation. He's still looking to execute and throw the football down the field, much like that of Aaron Rodgers back in the day. The comparison that I'm making to Austin and everybody else out there that thinks I'm nuts when I throw him in the same conversation as Aaron Rodgers is that when you talk about making something out of nothing with your feet, we haven't seen this sort of ability until the likes, I would go back again to Ben Roethlisberger, who would do it. And again, we don't think of Ben Roethlisberger as being a guy fleet of foot, but look at Roethlisberger at the height of his career. That's what he did, and that's what made him effective. And Aaron Rodgers was the same way. Can he throw a ball like that of Aaron Rodgers, Brock Purdy? No. And I'm going to stop right there in terms of the comparison. But as far as extending plays, he's putting himself in an elite class. And I think that the Brock Purdy conversation, as far as him not being in that top tier, maybe he's not Patrick Mahomes, but I think he's going to reset the market when it comes to getting paid. And he's going to make more money than anybody out there. And I think it's going to be, I would not be surprised if he continues on this trajectory if he's not in line for a $70 million contract.
70's a lot, but I mean, hey, if guys are getting 65, Trevor Lawrence, who hasn't won a darn thing in his entire career, getting 60 plus. So it's like, why wouldn't Brock get that when he's done more and has made a lot less so far in his career? But I think what you're getting at, Dan, is, it's not a direct comparison to quarterback, but it's more so saying that Brock is an underrated playmaker that should be in the conversation of or around the elite quarterbacks in football. Again, I wouldn't say he's Josh Allen. I wouldn't say that he's Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or even Joe Burrow at times, because Burrow has a great arm, but Brock is so underrated, and the stature, the height, the weight, the way he looks lends people to not think he can do those things. He'll joke about his 10-yard split being better than, Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Lamar Jackson's, which, Brock's not going to be a long-distance runner and shake off, 6-7 guys and throw a ball 70 yards downfield like Josh Allen may be able to do, but he'll get out of the pocket, he'll make two guys miss, he'll run for 5 or 6 yards and keep your drive alive, doing exactly what you want to do, while in that same breath allowing the offense to run itself with Kyle Shanahan at the helm. So, again, you can go back all day. Is Brock a top 10 quarterback, this, that, and the other? But if he isn't to some people, you have to admit he's at least one of the best playmaking quarterbacks in football thus far in 2024.
888-957-9570 is the phone number. We have the lines officially open. Let's get back out to the phone lines and off to Oakland, and let's join Marlon, who gets in on the conversation. What's up, Marlon?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, buddy.
Pretty good.
I think Brock Purdy, if you want to compare him to somebody, you compare him to. I think I'm a Oakland Raider fan, so I think he's Rich Gannon.
Oh.
Let me let that marinate for a second. Rich Gannon, who went to a Super Bowl and then got smoked by that of the
my
Tampa
dad
Bay.
a ton of money playing squares in that Super Bowl.
Buccaneers just took it to him. Rich Gannon.
Who won an MVP? Didn't he win an MVP?
Yes. That was the same year.
He did.
Okay.
Marlon, that's not bad, buddy.
And the reason why he got smoked is because Tampa Bay knew exactly what he was going to do. So that's the reason why he got smoked. So
that's true.
But I think Rich Gannon in his later years, I mean, he got a lot of he honed his skills, and I think Brock Purdy is right at that level. I don't think he's the best, one of the best top 5 quarterbacks playing now, but I do think he's he's a good quarterback, and I think he can maybe one day win MVP or whatever the case is. But we'll see.
Marlon, I like the comparison, and I'm trying to just visually have my mind go back to the days of Rich Gannon. I guess Rich Gannon was a different type quarterback. I think he had sort of a stronger arm. I don't know that it's a different sort of skill set. And I think I want to say that Rich Gannon wasn't as mobile as Brock Purdy. We can let Marlon go. I don't know if Marlon's still on the line, but I think that it's interesting, Sterling. I'm going to say that Brock Purdy's upside and Brock Purdy's future is a lot brighter than that of Rich Gannon. Am I wrong?
I mean, if Purdy's Rich Gannon now and he's only in year 2.5 or year 3, the upside should be a lot higher than that, right? People forget that Brock, coming off a UCL tear, almost won the MVP last year. I mean, yeah, did the weapons help him? Sure, but we've seen quarterbacks take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to click. Sam Darnold's finally clicking in year 7 in the NFL. It's not as if that guys that don't play for 5 or 6 years can't have the other level in their game kind of met, right? We've seen guys peak early and then fall off a cliff in their career, but Brock has been this kind of the exact same guy, but incremental improvements year after year. I don't think Brock Purdy makes that throw to George Kittle in the end zone near the pylon in the second half and the first drive of second half against Seahawks in year 1. But in year 3, the arm strength's gotten better to a point of he is fearless with the football, and those are traits you want. Guys that say, you know what, whatever. If I make a mistake, that stinks, but I'm going to bounce back anyways. And I think for Brock, it's like, all the risks that he usually takes are worth the reward for him. And whether it's Rich Gannon or not, Brock has proven to be, if he is the Rich Gannon comparison that Marlon says, well, the ceiling is way higher than that for Brock Purdy after this year.
Okay, I take it back. Marlon, where the hell are you? Marlon, are you out your damn mind? So my man Rich Gannon was in the league for 14 years before he went to Oakland. I had no idea. He was
in Minnesota, right?
He was with Minnesota, and then he was with Kansas City for 4 years, and then he got to Oakland and obviously became that guy. But, yeah, I don't know if I can go there. I mean, he had been in the league for more than a decade before he enjoyed some success. So, yeah, to your point, Sterling, I think that Brock Purdy has his entire world in front of him and is doing it at a much, much younger stage than that of Rich Gannon. I forgot Gannon had been a grizzled veteran who had been in the league. That's right, all those years out there in Minnesota. And then he gets to then Oakland. And I think John Gruden had just left, I want to say, right? And was it Callahan that was coaching him that year? They went to that Super Bowl. I think it was Gruden that coached the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Brooks was the MVP. And, of course, that was the last time we've seen the Raiders get to the big dance. Raiders are a whole nother story. Sorry for what's going on there. Look, Devontae Adams wants to get traded. There's talk about him going to the New York Jets. Let me just say this for you Raider fans and anybody who likes Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams doesn't have it anymore. And to have Devontae Adams at age 32, like quarterbacks, wide receivers lose it faster probably than anybody. And I know in that, what was the HBO special, Receivers? Like the 2 times he was open last year, he's kicking dirt and getting angry at Jimmy Garoppolo because he didn't get the ball. But the separation with Devontae Adams is not what it once was. So, I mean, if you're looking for a second round for Devontae Adams, try again. I ain't doing that if I'm the New York Jets. But any Devontae Adams thought? Are you a Devontae Adams guy?
I like Devontae. I think that in the offseason, had it been, Ayuk wants to get out of here, I think Devontae would have been a great replacement. But why did he quit on Oakland or I guess Las Vegas now? Like, why? You signed a brand new contract 5 months ago. Like, why do you want out now? Like, why'd you commit and then want out? He hasn't played almost all year. They're changing quarterbacks now from Minshew to O'Connell. Like, Devontae Adams is now a diva receiver, not just a receiver. He's a diva now, which if I was a contending team not named the Jets, you can keep him far away from me.
All right, we got to get to a break. I want to continue the conversation to the 49ers and now take a look at their next opponent. Speaking of Patrick Mahomes, here come the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll do that and much more. It's Sterling Bennett. It's Dan Devone. We continue on 95.7 The Game after this.
In business, success is never by chance. You know that better than anyone. So why settle for a marketing agency that gambles with your money? At Scale Marketing, we've been in your shoes. Our founders successfully owned and operated businesses long before becoming marketers.
Free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Sterling Bennett and Dan Devone. Sterling, I was walking into the studio and our new producer, Mr. Steven Risotto, handed me a body armor. One of these new, not the clothing apparel, but a drink. Have
It's
you
the
had
Klay Thompson brand, right?
It's the what brand?
Isn't it Klay Thompson's like sponsorship deal he has with them?
Oh, is he in on it as well? Risotto, is
I think
that true? Apparently. Because apparently, according to Steven Risotto, by the way, who makes the all-Italian named team here at 95.7 The Game. Risotto, which is what? It's, I want to say rice and cheese, a little Parmesan. But so Klay Thompson is an owner of Body Armor, is that right?
I don't know if he's an owner, but I think he has a sponsorship with them because when I was there working late nights, they'd bring in cases of those, and I would take some home for the family when no one knew about it. So I believe so.
Oh, so you were embezzling from the station?
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
My brother was like, these are fantastic. So they're good, I guess.
Yeah, so apparently Buster Posey is...
Oh.
Why wait? At T-Mobile, customers 55.
That's Steven Risotto pushing wrong buttons. But yeah, we're talking about Body Armor. So apparently, Risotto, we got to give Risotto a nickname. Risotto tells me that Buster Posey is apparently an investor and an owner of Body Armor. I haven't talked to you about Buster Posey. But before we get back to the 49ers, I had to giggle because you know what happens after the World Series? That's when you get into, baseball talks begin. Baseball offseason, the hot stove.
Yeah.
And so
the winter meetings happen.
Winter meetings. And so what takes place after the offseason is that you have to deal with those players. You have to tender offers to players that are arbitration eligible. And just hearing that phrase, I'm like, really? Buster's going to do this? We're okay with this? Like, really? Buster is going to tender offers to arbitration eligible players? What the hell does he know about that? I'm sorry. I love Buster as much as the next guy. I'm just sort of very, very cautious about what I think is a precarious move on the part of the Giants, making him the president of baseball ops.
I mean, he's probably not going to actually be the one doing the paperwork. He'll go hire a GM and get the right guy in the building. He's already talking about, Brian Sabian and, Bobby Evans' name has been floated out there. I don't know how much that's actually real or not, but Buster will get somebody he trusts in there to then give the arbitration guys their contracts and tender contracts for him. He'll just kind of steer the ship in the right direction for the guys under him. But I'm excited for Buster. My father, it was anti-Zaidi for a long time. He was like, every game they lost, I told you, this guy's not worth it. He's not built for it. And I was like, Dad, give him a chance. But years go by, and obviously things continue to be the same and be average almost every single year. But I think every Giants fan, whether you like Zaidi or not, this is a renewal of hope, if you will, for the San Francisco Giants. It's like finally everyone loves Buster, face of the franchise for a decade plus. Kind of throw back to the winning days of 3 World Series, but there is a renewal right now. There's rejuvenation. I am all in. Buster, take me to the promised land right now if you're a Giants fan.
We talked about how the optics are never good for Brock Purdy initially. He looks like a sawed-off quarterback out of Iowa State. I was out on the guy. No, give me the guy 6'4" who's out of a blue blood. I want the guy out of Alabama, Texas, LSU, USC, not Brock Purdy. But he's won me over. But the same could be said about Farhan, although Farhan never won me over. He never got to that plateau. But the optics were bad, is that when your team loses and then you see Farhan, you're like, okay, I'm getting even more angry because you're the guy. Right. You just, as opposed to Buster Posey, who I think is going to buy himself some time. You're like, well, okay, we'll give you another couple of years, Buster, because you're Buster and you look good in the suit, as opposed to Farhan. Yeah, I would just say that president of baseball operations, I said this last week, and I won't delve into this too much this week, but that position is for eggheads. It's for the Farhans of the world. We just got the wrong egghead. But that is an egghead position. I mentioned Scott Harris, who is the best. He's the head of baseball ops for the Detroit Tigers. He was the GM of the San Francisco Giants. He went to Detroit. He's the guy that is responsible in large part for the turnaround for what is really sort of the envy of just about every major league team to be Detroit that young and that cheap, having all those players under team control. And who's Scott Harris? Scott Harris was an econ major in college. Scott Harris went to the Columbia Business School of Management. That's where these guys are from when you're talking about tendering offers for arbitration or overseeing a minor league system or putting together an analytic team. It's about guys that do that sort of thing, that have that sort of ability, that they're equipped with that. It's in their bag, not Buster. Buster can walk through the halls and say, you know who I am, I'm Buster Posey. Yeah, that carries weight to a certain degree, but in terms of all the minutia, including tendering an offer to somebody who's arbitration eligible, yeah, you could outsource all of that. But if you can outsource stuff, then why did we hire you? Usually the guys that oversee that stuff have a vision, and they want their hands on top of just about, they want to touch everything because they want to establish their vision.
Zaidi.
Yeah.
He was changing lineups and stuff, which Buster's not going to do that, most likely. I would assume he's not. He'll trust his manager and GM and those guys to do their job, and he'll do his. But my father, for his comedy, as it is, he always believed that Farhan Zaidi was a Dodgers double agent to come in and just turn the Giants into a mess, which I never thought that. They won 107 games and almost beat the Dodgers in the playoffs one year. But, Giants fans, I think when they see the name Buster Posey at the top of the list in regards to who's in control, it gives you this, we're calm. He may not be an econ major, but he knows baseball better than almost anybody does, right? He was under Bochy as a great manager. He's played with the Crawford and the Belts and the veteran guys like Pat Burrows on the staff currently. He knows Bob Melvin, Bay Area rivalry and whatnot, and Buster may fail. It could be a disaster, but I think what it does is it gives you someone to point to and say, you know what, you actually know baseball. And not to say that stats and analytics aren't a part of the game anymore. They certainly are. It's a very, very, very important part, which Zaidi was good at to a certain degree, but I think it ran its welcome. It was done. Okay, it's not working, move on, but I think I speak for 99% of Giants fans where it's finally, there's a name we like, a player we love, and hopefully he can steer us back to a winning product on the field. Matt Chapman's back for a big contract. You hopefully sign some big-name guys in the offseason. I mean, I don't want to get my hopes up, but Juan Soto, I know he's a Yankee now and everything, but my goodness, man, Chris O'Connell, who works at the station, was like, we're signing everybody now. And I won't go that far, but the hopes are certainly very, very high for Buster Posey in San Francisco.
Okay, let me just end the suspense right now. All right. Soto is not coming to San Francisco. Shohei Ohtani's not coming to San Francisco. All right. Aaron Judge is not coming to San Francisco. The San Francisco Giants, they could hit the sweet spot for somebody like that of a Willie Adames. It's an upgrade from Milwaukee, and you can afford him. And I was in on Pete Alonso, but if this guy, this Bryce Eldridge is on the fast track, then you don't need a Pete Alonso. You just need, I don't know, Flores just hold it down for a couple of months until
Anthony Santander from the Orioles, switch hitter, got some power. I love that.
I think that your outfield, I mean, it's not, you're close. You're close because, right now the only position that I think is an area of concern is right field. I'm done with Yastrzemski. Sorry, bro. I cannot see you fly out to right field anymore. I'm done with Yastrzemski in right field. But Elliot Ramos, Jung-Hoo Lee, and you give me a right fielder, you plug somebody in there, and suddenly it's a baseball team. And obviously, you got to adjust the pitching, but they're not that far away. Again, I just don't see Buster Posey. When I think of Buster Posey, I'm like, one of his strengths, it's tendering an offer to somebody who's arbitration eligible. Yes, I feel good about Buster Posey. Hell yeah, go get him, Buster. Not going to happen. So somebody on the text line here, Sterling, as we continue with the comparisons for Brock Purdy, we heard our man Marlon out in Oakland give us Rich Gannon. And initially we had to think about it, and then we're like, okay, wait, Rich Gannon had been in the league for 25 years when he finally got to Oakland. I'm not going there. But I like this, that somebody's throwing out a comparison to Purdy. How about a young Drew Brees? Now, I would say this about Drew Brees is that, they're very similar in terms of their height. I would say Drew Brees had a stronger arm back in the day. Later on, he could not throw past 30 yards. And Drew Brees is going to go down as probably one of, if not the most accurate quarterback in my lifetime. And while Brock Purdy is accurate, I don't know that he has that pinpoint type of accuracy for the veteran out of Purdue, Drew Brees.
Well, it's so funny because you hear names like Drew Brees, and a lot of that is because of his size, right? Brock's a smaller guy. Brees was, on the tippy toes looking over the offensive line, like, I can't see anybody, but I'm going to take a shot downfield, and he was phenomenal. Drew Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks of the last 25-plus years. But go back to Kyle Shanahan's, it may have been the pre-draft process or the post-draft post-draft press conference after they picked Trey Lance, and they asked Kyle what he wanted in a quarterback, and he said he wants a mixture of Drew Brees and Lamar Jackson. And the expectation was, okay, that's going to be Trey Lance, and obviously it wasn't. But then you get Brock Purdy, who, funny enough, is the smaller guy like Drew Brees was, is accurate, not to Drew Brees' extent, but accurate enough. He's making plays with his legs like Lamar Jackson does, has a better 10-yard split. Like, winning a quarterback that is Drew Brees and Lamar Jackson is more of a Josh Allen thing, right? But I think Brock Purdy, with what Kyle Shanahan was looking for in Trey Lance, Brock Purdy is the answer to that question of, who's going to be this next great quarterback in San Francisco. I mean, how many more records does Brock have to break? The most passing yards through his first 25 games in Niner history, a higher passer rating through his first 25 games in NFL history than Patrick Mahomes by 0.1 point. Like, Brock has been what Shanahan wanted all along. Drew Brees and Lamar Jackson combined into one quarterback, which is crazy to say that he was the last pick of the draft and he's that. But I agree that while the heights are, I don't think Purdy will be Brees when it's all said and done. At least in his prime, there can be a lot of similarities there for Brock Purdy.
We talk about Drew Brees and making the comparison between a young Drew Brees and a young Brock Purdy. Drew Brees, when he concluded his career at the collegiate level for Purdue, he was in the Rose Bowl against the University of Washington. And it was Drew Brees versus Marcus Tuiasosopo, for you Tuiasosopo fans.
Raider legend.
Yes. And, Tuiasosopo was thought to be, or he was supposed to be the big draft. He was going to go higher in the draft, and I think he did, than that of Drew Brees. And Drew Brees wasn't regarded as good of a quarterback as that of Marcus Tuiasosopo, and Tuiasosopo sort of flamed out. You're right. Got an opportunity with the Raiders, and it never materialized. I think just to go down this path, Marcus Tuiasosopo was before his time. Like, if Tuiasosopo was coming out now with the ability to run and throw, we talk about buying time and being that dual threat, I think he'd be much, much more effective in the National Football League. But we don't need to do a deep dive into Marcus Tuiasosopo. Just interesting when he
name all the Raider quarterbacks when they were bad. Connor Cook's in there somewhere.
Oh my goodness, the pride of Michigan State. It was started. That playoff game against Houston. Remember that back in the day? So the comparisons with Brock Purdy, man, we like to do this, but he's sort of a standalone, and I think that. He's been so effective, not just when you talked about the records that he's been breaking and the numbers that he puts up. And typically when you think about a 49er quarterback, especially under Kyle Shanahan's tutelage and under his system, you're talking about guys who's throwing that shallow cross like Jimmy Garoppolo or checking down, the dinking and Dunkin' Donuts, as they like to call it. Let me just tell you, for those of you, and I don't need to say something that you don't already know for you 49er fans, this dude is going downtown. Like, he's looking to take the lid off. And he has no problem stretching the field. And I want to say that he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks throwing the ball down the field. I'm not talking about within that 15 to 25-yard range. I'm talking about a guy who's looking for the grand slam, who's going for it all on these go routes to Ayuk or whomever. And I think that's part of his game that is somewhat underrated.
Yeah, I know last year, I think Brock ended last season, although didn't have these many attempts, I think he was the most efficient deep ball passer in football. And this year, I think it was prior to the Cardinals game, he walked into that game with the most air yards in football. For all the nerds out there that are like, he doesn't throw the ball deep and they want the air yards and the passes, they don't want the dink and dunk. Brock was the NFL leader in that category 2 weeks ago. And, of course, against the Seattle Seahawks, he throws that 76-yard touchdown pass, which, yes, had a ton of yak involved in it. But Brock is someone that will take what the defense gives him, but also he'll set himself up for success deep downfield over and over again. And I think, it may not be pretty sometimes. Brock is unafraid to throw into double, triple coverage and trust his guys to go up and get it, which sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that is the gunslinger nature of Brock Purdy. He'll run around for 25 seconds and try to make a big play, and often or not, he will make a big play. And those are things that Shanahan may kind of wince and say, just trust the system. And Brock's like, you know what? Like, I trust it, but sometimes I have to do my own thing as well and make big plays happen. So he's just a playmaker, man. Like, Brock Purdy's name in the dictionary should have the word playmaker right next to it to me.
One thing about this playmaker, though, if I was Kyle Shanahan, I would just have the conversation, a little caution to the wind. Well, I like the way you're extending, and we've talked about it. Just be a little careful when you're reversing field. Some of these where he's like turning and going the other way. Yes, it's fun. It's Doug Flutie-esque, but he's also tempting fate because he can get tracked down, and that's losing a lot of yardage. Or I'm afraid that now that he's afraid that he has this renewed confidence, and that everybody is throwing all these compliments his way, that this is a guy that can extend plays, that he's going to sort of buy into that, start reading these headlines, and going to try and make something out of nothing and throw that pick at a crucial time of a game. You still got to throw the ball away. Which he still does, but I'm just afraid that this idea that, here I go, I'm going to get on my bicycle, could backfire in a big game at a big moment for the Niners.
Are you saying that you're a little afraid of Brock Purdy playing more like Josh Allen than he's supposed to?
I haven't thought about it that way, but yeah, he doesn't have Josh Allen's capabilities. I'm just saying, stay within what it is that you can do. And yes, he's been elusive, but it's when he's reversing field and is pivoting and going the other way and retreating like 10, 15 yards in the
losing
backfield.
10 yards.
Yeah, and he's proven that he can, that he has the ability and the physical ability to sort of make that up and make something out of nothing. But that's a high wire act, and sooner rather than later it can catch up with you.
Would you want to? So, under Jimmy Garoppolo, when he was a quarterback here, there was a clear, you can tell when Shanahan would tighten those reins and Jimmy throws a pick or whatever, fumbles the football, and they run the football 17 times in a row.
Nine times in an NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers.
There is no trust here. Whereas Kyle, sometimes it feels like, this year has been a little different, a lot more seven-step drops and just trusting Purdy to win games, which he can, but hasn't worked a lot this year. Do you want Shanahan to tighten those reins? Not like Jimmy Garoppolo's era where it was like, we don't trust you at all. Just, screen passes, dump offs, kind of get back to that dink and dunk if Brock does kind of get this more hero ball mentality at times? No,
and I think it's part of the success. You can clearly see where Kyle Shanahan says, do you. Just do you, because I trust you. Okay. There is clearly a trust factor between the two because he goes through his progression, they say, faster than anybody in the NFL, and he still believes that 9 out of 10 times he's going to make the right decision. I guess my point is just be careful when you're reversing field and you're giving up that much yardage and trying to make something out of a play that's obviously broken down. That has a tendency to come back and bite you in the butt. But as far as your question is, as to whether Kyle Shanahan has any sort of structure or is keeping him in bounds, no. I think it's basically it's your world, but just I'm trusting you to do the right thing. But you do Brock Purdy, and I think we'll be fine. I think that's the relationship between the two. I could be wrong.
But that goes back to what you said earlier, that Shanahan trusts Purdy the most of any quarterback he's had in San Francisco. And I think you go back to his time in Atlanta, him and Matt Ryan butted heads a ton that first year as the OC with the Falcons, and that's never really been the case for Brock Purdy. Now, different situations for sure. Ryan was a first-round pick, had already had success pre-Kyle Shanahan, whereas Brock was a rookie, had no success before Kyle Shanahan, and was this team's third-string quarterback. But you hear the reports of Shanahan saying in training camp and OTAs, like, this kid has it. This guy, is already better than Trey Lance, already better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but just can't start him because he has to save face. How do you not start Trey? How do you not start Jimmy when he re-signed that contract for 1 year? But I think you go back, Shanahan, when you watch him since 2017, the emotions he emits from his quarterbacks or to his quarterbacks are usually negative. Whereas when they beat the Lions in the NFC Championship game last year, you watched for the first time a quarterback and a head coach embrace in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. You can tell there was this emotional connection to each other. There was this ultimate trust that, okay, yeah, it was a crazy win. You almost lost that game. It seemed like all hope was lost in that first half, but there is a definitive 100% complete trust in both those guys to make the right play, call the right play at the right time. And, that hasn't happened. And it goes back to they are intertwined almost at the brain. Like they see football the exact same way, which I do think goes into Shanahan saying, you know what, I don't have to have reins on you at all. You're going to make mistakes, sure, but more often than not, you're going to make the right play at the right time, and we're going to win a lot of games with you, Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I think it's a good point because I can remember him dressing down Jimmy Garoppolo. And I remember him specifically going over to the bench and just saying, bro, you cannot make that pass. You cannot throw a pick into the end zone. And to Jimmy Garoppolo's credit, Jimmy obviously wasn't privy to what exactly was being said verbatim, but he was just shaking his head like, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And as far as Trey Lance, Trey Lance never got it. Trey Lance's accuracy was never.
Still hasn't.
Yes, and it wasn't even worth dressing down. It wasn't even worth attacking him on the sidelines or berating him because he was just so far away from being the quarterback that everybody envisioned when he went so high in that draft years ago. But you're right. I think that those two are on the same page. Another player who's on the same page, at least for that last game, was Deebo Samuel with the big reception. It was good to see him get back into the end zone. The reason why I mentioned Deebo Samuel, and we can get back to Kyle Shanahan, and we can continue this conversation on the other side, is this: I want to bubble wrap this guy a little more. And if you remember the beginning of the season, Christian McCaffrey wasn't available. Now, we didn't know that it was to the extent it's become to this point where, obviously the damage to the Achilles in both feet, but Jordan Mason was getting carries. And then it was Deebo Samuel who basically was splitting time in that game against the New York Jets as the running back. And I'm talking about he was the lone guy in the backfield.
The wide back.
Not only that, he's getting the ball and he's going right up the guard's butt, or he's going to the A-gap. I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? This is Deebo. This is a guy who's injury prone. There's enough wear and tear on this guy. And when I see him returning kicks, and now, since that Jet game, you don't see him going up and inside. Like he's still, at least he's getting jet sweeps, so they're looking to turn the corner. But maybe we can tease this, but I just want to get your initial thought on the usage of Deebo Samuel, considering how important he is to the team and also considering the numerous injuries that this guy has dealt with over the years.
Without Christian McCaffrey, and even sometimes with Christian McCaffrey, he is the most important offensive player on this team. With the weapons they have, the offense has run through Deebo ever since he's got here in 2019. We saw what he did in 2021. The All-Pro year carried the offense almost by himself to a playoff appearance and 2 wins. And so Deebo has to stay upright. This team is different without Deebo, even with CMC healthy. But yeah, Deebo has limited reps in him, limited snaps in his body, where you have to preserve him throughout the next, I don't know what it is now, 11 weeks or so, 12 weeks or so, where you watch him last year, he's banged up the entire playoffs. He's on the sideline in the Super Bowl on pivotal plays. That can't happen if you want to win the big one. So I agree with you. Limit what he can do, or limit how many times you utilize him as a wide back and whatnot, but he has to be involved in the offense. And I think that without Christian McCaffrey, the usage will be way up until CMC gets back.
All right, we continue here on 95.7 The Game. We'll get in a little bit more conversation with the 49ers. I do want to go through the NFL and also talk a little postseason baseball. But when we come back, Matthew Wright, the new field goal kicker for the 49ers. Do not, and I reiterate, do not ever try and make another tackle. Kick the ball, pick up your tee, and go to the sidelines. Go get a drink of water, all right? That's not what you're paid to do, young fella. We'll discuss special teams. It's Sterling Bennett, Dan Devone, back after this.
Hey, it's Willard and Dibbs.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Sterling Bennett and Dan Devone. My man Cam.
Kicker highlights. Who would have thought?
Seriously, what's he thinking? I mean, it wasn't as if he was the last player between him and a touchdown. Correct me if I'm wrong, there were other guys that were angling in that are paid
Just a
to
gamer,
do that.
Dan. He's a gamer. Getting his hands dirty. That linebacker mentality.
I mean, he seriously looks like the furthest thing from a gamer. We talk about eggheads.
Yeah, he
I mean,
does.
that looks like a guy who goes
playing video games, not being a gamer.
He looks like a guy who goes from the stationary bike to kicking field goals back to the stationary bike. And in terms of trying to make to bring down a player who's got a head of steam in a football game is the last thing in the world you want to see from our man Matthew Wright, who takes over the kicking duties. But
now he's hurt, separated shoulder. They have 2 kickers that are hurt now. What do they do? Gotta sign somebody else, maybe.
Well, it's tryouts again. It's here we go. It's everybody come on down, and it's the beauty of the NFL and the Matthew Wrights of the world. There's another guy who's waiting in the wings.
Sure.
There's another dude who can do exactly what it is that he did. The one thing on Matthew Wright is that there were some, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but on both sides, you didn't see a lot of touchbacks in that game. And I don't know if it was Lumen's Field. I don't know if it was weather conditions. But it was not only Seattle, but there was a lot of returnable kicks on both sides. And I don't know whether, he wasn't getting enough air under his kicks and providing an opportunity for his coverage team to get down there. There was sort of a low angle. But the same could be said on Seattle's end as well. I don't know whether the weather conditions or whether the atmosphere out there in Seattle had something to do with any of that.
Well, it was like 73 degrees. It was a great night for football, so I have a hard time believing, and I know you spend more time out there than I have. I've never been to Seattle, so maybe, doesn't care or doesn't matter how nice the weather may be degrees-wise, but I think it was an effort by the Seattle kicker, Jason Myers, to make sure San Francisco takes the ball out, but you watch the field goals Matthew Wright made, and he was perfect. That ball was coming off his foot weird. They were just like little chip shots in, but the ball just didn't have much strength behind it. So it felt like he couldn't kick that far. And you watch that game, and at a certain point in time, San Francisco is leading. What was that time? There's 23-3, and next thing you know, a 97-yard kick return because Matthew Wright can't get touchbacks. So I would like to think they would rather that ball go in the back of the end zone every single time. He just couldn't.
Where are you at with 2 things? Special teams, Schneider, obviously, an accomplished coach when it comes to special teams. And
is he, though?
Well, I'm leaving it up to you.
Okay.
Talk to me about Schneider. Are you going to make a change when it comes to special teams? And where are you at with Sorensen in the defense?
We'll start with Sorensen. Sorensen, he's called 6 games. It was a lot better performance against the Seattle Seahawks than it was against the Cardinals and whatnot. So I think with time he'll learn. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, things will get better. Again, you didn't have 4 starters. Hargrave's out. Greenlaw hasn't played all year. Mooney Ward is a scratch before kickoff even happens, and Hufunga's back on IR, and you have to have young guys step up. They did. I thought it was a great game by Nick Bosa and whatnot, so you're hoping things are going the right direction with the defense, but it's one game, time will tell. But on Brian Schneider and the special teams, fire everybody. 32nd ranked unit in football. They have cost this team so many big games. They've cost this team games this year. I don't care how good you were in Seattle before you got to San Francisco. It's been a disaster. Every game, you are holding your breath on kickoffs, on punts, on field goals. It doesn't matter. This team is terrible on special teams. Sure, players got to make plays. That's fine. And I get they got you a fumble against Seattle on Thursday, and they got you a touchdown on a blocked field goal 2 weeks ago, but I don't care. The mistakes you've made have outweighed the good you've done for 3 or 4 seasons now. You have 8 days until your next game. Make a change. You got time. Make a change. Be 22nd, not 32nd in football. It's terrible.
Special teams, as anybody will tell you, and back in my days at St. Ignatius, shout out to the Wildcats, that was like the first thing that we would practice every day. And it's making a high school analogy, but just to show the level of importance, because I always remember that our coach said this is going to win and lose us a couple of games every single year is special teams. And just to put a level of importance on that facet of the game. And so anybody who follows sports and knows football knows just how crucial special teams is. And I'm surprised because usually the 49ers are they're so efficient in that area. And now without another kicker, I find
but they haven't been. They haven't been efficient. That's the issue. Under Kyle Shanahan, I get 2017, 2018, not great teams, but the special teams unit has cost them games since 2019. It's not been good. And Brian Schneider was brought in to fix the issues. It's only gotten worse. I mean, whether it's playoff games against the Packers, big kickoff and punt returns, fumbles in the Super Bowl with McLeod and Darrell Luter Jr., Hufanga blocks or Jordan Willis blocks a punt in Lambeau and Hufanga picks it up and you win that game because of special teams. But for every great thing, there's 3 or 4 bad things that happen before and after that. So it's like, if the punt isn't blocked in Minnesota, you win that game most likely. If you don't miss a field goal and you don't blow a punt coverage, you beat the Rams in that game. We're talking 4-2, 5-1, not 3-3. Fingers crossed, your season's still alive if you don't beat the Seahawks this game. So they've not been good. I get it. Shanahan wants to be hands off and say, forget it, whatever. But it's like at a certain point in time, you're losing games because you can't execute correctly. Why has a change not been made? That's my question. Why? You
mentioned Talanoa Hufanga going back to that Green Bay game of the playoffs and that 9-degree weather. And he, of course, recovers that block punt and takes it into the end zone for the touchdown. That was a game, by the way, just a sidetrack. That was our man Jimmy Garoppolo beating Aaron Rodgers out there in Green Bay in the frigid tundra that is beautiful Wisconsin that time of the year. And it really was sort of the beginning of the end. I think anybody in Green Bay that saw Aaron Rodgers those last 2 years has said, New York, you want him? You're going to have him. We'll take Jordan Love. We're good with that.
Oh, yeah.
But just to get back to Talanoa Hufanga, out with another injury. Look, I think it's a bad time if you're Talanoa Hufanga. It's never a good time to be out with an injury. But when you're talking about getting paid, his contract's up. Same with Charvarius Ward. And I think with the emergence now, you need to see more. But with Bernardo Green, Malik Mustafa, you're beginning to see and Jair Brown now in his second year out of Penn State. Some of these kids now, as they get more reps, they're beginning to suddenly make a name for themselves. And the 49ers can't bring everybody back. And I think it's either going to be Charvarius Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, or potentially both that don't come back to San Francisco next year. Why? Because if I got players under team control that maybe aren't as good, I'm going to roll the dice with Bernardo Green and Malik Mustafa as opposed to paying you guys. And the real reason why is because whether you're paying Brock Purdy $60 or $70 million, I need a little loose change in my pocket to afford that deal.
My biggest fear, and you can look at it this in one of two ways, is that one, Hufanga's hurt again, which stinks. You want him to be healthy. When he's healthy, he's a great player. Maybe there's a discounted price you can retain him at, and he can be that third safety or maybe even a starter again next year. But my biggest fear is that him being a USC guy, that he goes down the road next year and plays for the Rams. That's my biggest fear. And it's certainly a possibility. He knows the defense. He knows the system. He is from down there, essentially. I'd want to bring him back on a cheaper contract, but if Mustafa plays really well, which in one game's time, he gets the big pick in the first quarter and seems to spark the defense. And I think overall, when it's all said and done this year, he'll be this team's best safety. That's the potential he has over Jair Brown and over Hufanga. But, they drafted Mustafa for a reason. They had the foresight to say, you know what, Hufanga off the injury, contract year, we got to have somebody else in here that can be a good coverage player and a great tackler. That is Malik Mustafa. So I think they prepared themselves for life without Hufanga, but that's not just a one-year conversation. That's when he's gone potentially next year too. So it stinks, but right now they did the same thing with Mooney Ward. you bring in Bernardo Green, second-round pick. He almost has the exact same player comp to Charvarius Ward. So they made it an effort to find replacements for star players that could leave in the offseason.
That Malik Mustafa's a thumper, man. Like, he comes downhill. He's laying some wood. He's got some Ronnie Lott in him. Not like I know I made the analogy.
It's not that far.
Between Brock Purdy and Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
He's just one of those guys that likes to stick his head in there. He likes to put his hat in there, as they like to say. And you don't see that a lot. I mean, Talanoa Hufanga was like that. But supporting the run these days, whether it's your corners or your safeties, it's sort of a dying breed. But he's a guy that likes to get up and in there and be that sort of hybrid linebacker. Speaking of the other cornerbacks, so I think Diamador Lenore is another guy you got to pay. To me, that's a no-brainer. He's an up-and-coming sort of, I don't know if anybody's a quote-unquote lockdown corner anymore, but he's getting to that territory. He is one of the best, I think, in making a name for himself in the NFL, certainly as one of the young cornerbacks. I think, to me, you sign him. But what are you doing with Mooney Ward? Would you let him walk?
I mean, he's hurt this year right now.
But even when he's played, Sterling, he's not been the same Mooney Ward. He just looks like he's not the same guy, getting beat and just, I don't know. Something's off.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to attribute those things to injuries. He had the adductor surgery in the offseason. Who knows how much that's affected his play. He's had these lingering lower body injuries throughout the season. So I would like to say those are injury concerns or the poor plays because of those things. But yeah, when he's been out there, the run defense has been poor. Not great in coverage, and it's so funny because, we all like Charvarius Ward here at the station, and as fans, he's been this team's number one cornerback for a couple years now, and he's locked down some really great receivers, including DK Metcalf last year, in both times playing Seattle. But you go back and you watch that Vikings game, he's complaining in the post-game press conference, why am I not shadowing Justin Jefferson? And then in games after, he can't even beat the other team's best receiver at times. So that's why I lean towards him being injured and that being the cause of his, I guess you can say, the poor play thus far. But you got, you had a week off. You didn't play against Seattle. You have 10 days off in between your next game. So I'm hoping those 17-ish days off he can get right because he's got to play his former team coming up soon. So I'm hoping that although I would not pay him in the offseason, because, again, guys got to go to maintain the majority of your core and your roster. But they need him this year to step up in a big way. So I'm hoping he can get right and play great against Kansas City next Sunday.
Oh, speaking of which, let's talk about them Chiefs. The undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. Again, as much as you want the 49ers to be undefeated, it's about peaking at the right time. Because if you were to ask me what's the best team in the AFC, it ain't Kansas City, it's Baltimore. I know Baltimore got beat by the Raiders, right?
Interesting.
Oh, hell yeah. Have you seen what Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are doing these days? Oh, yeah. And the defense is always the defense under John Harbaugh. That's the team to me right now that I want nothing to do with if, let's say, the season were coming to an end and you got to play a Super Bowl. They are the best team in the AFC from what I've seen. But Kansas City is undefeated. It's a Chief team now that we talked about Devontae Adams. They could use a wide receiver or not because it's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, for crying out loud, that guy
I hope not.
He makes something out of nothing. But what are your thoughts on Kansas City? Do they still scare the hell out of you?
I mean, why wouldn't they? It's Patrick Mahomes. It's Travis Kelce, who I don't care how, I guess you can say, subpar of a year they're having. They're 5-0. Spagnuolo's coaching the crap out of that defense out there, and he always does. I mean, even in the Super Bowl this past year, and even go back to 2019, San Francisco did a job in stopping Patrick Mahomes for 3.5 quarters, almost 4 quarters this past year especially. They got interceptions. They got takeaways. They got turnovers. Go back to when they got destroyed at Levi's in the first game Brock Purdy ever played in Christian McCaffrey's debut. Hufanga gets the early pick. That game is close at halftime. Slowing down Mahomes, albeit is tough, really hasn't been San Francisco's main issue. It's the offensive dry spells. So if the offense can refine themselves after a win against Seattle and execute in the red zone, yeah, there's concerns. It's Mahomes, it's Kelce, it's those guys out there. Andy Reid's calling plays, called whatever, calling cheeseburgers, whatever he's calling them out there. Like, San Francisco can beat the Chiefs. The Falcons almost beat the Chiefs. The Bengals, with a terrible defense, almost beat the Chiefs. It's just about making the big play at the right time to hopefully pull out a victory, which I know the Chiefs have been San Francisco's Achilles heel, but I think San Francisco, before they went on their dynasty run in the 80s, had this problem with the Cowboys. They couldn't beat them in the playoffs. They beat them in the regular season, didn't see them again come playoff time and get over the hump. So maybe this is the year San Francisco can get over the hump against Kansas City.
You know, when Patrick Mahomes it's hard to cheer against this guy. It really
I can't
is.
stand him.
Really?
I can't stand him. No, I can't stand him.
Okay, now you need to tell me why.
I don't know if it's like his voice, the way he plays.
Oh, he's Kermit the Frog.
I mean, he is, but then it's like, then you add in, the wife, her yelling and screaming at the fans and being obnoxious.
Yeah. Okay,
and like then his
wife.
brother, which that's not Patrick's fault, but it's just the collective, like he's the golden boy of the NFL. And I think this is how other fan bases felt with Tom Brady, where the later half of his career, I loved Tom Brady. But early on, I couldn't stand him. Beat the Raiders, the Tuck rule, the game-winning field goals, just squeaking out these weird wins left and right in the biggest games. Like, it just makes me not want to, like, I just can't root for Patrick Mahomes. The Super Bowl losses for sure don't help, but it's like, I think of any team over Dallas, over the Seahawks, I hate the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the Chiefs. I just like Patrick Mahomes. When I think about him, I want to be critical. I want to say, yeah, you're right. Tom Brady back in the day with the perfect hair and the perfect life and the perfect wife and just TB12. Yeah. You could see where there's like, yeah, bro, I'm out on you. I'm tired of this. Want to see you get beat. Just like Steph Curry pisses a lot of people off. People think his life has been a boulevard of unblinking green lights. Dad played in the NBA. You got the perfect family life. You're a good-looking guy and you're doing this shimmy. Screw you. I don't know. When it comes to Mahomes, I saw him. Maybe this is where this stems from. I saw him in the playoffs. There was a shot. Kansas City obviously just lost to the New York Yankees in the divisional round of the playoffs. There was a shot of him because obviously it's Kansas City and the game was in Kansas City, Royals-Yankees. And the Royals had just scored a couple of runs. Everybody's going nuts. And there was a shot of him in the suite. He was going nuts. He was jumping up and down. He was getting in his buddy's face. He just... all the others, his brother doesn't bother me. His brother's sort of out there, but it's, I don't know. I want to hate the guy, and then he's got like a dad bod. We talk about our man TB12 and Tom Brady. He's the antithesis, man. He's walking around with a spare tire. He just sort of like, there's something about him that's sort of real. And when I hear him talk in that Kermit the Frog voice, it's just, I want to hate the guy, but I can't get there. I don't know. Maybe
I think it's just the success.
Well, yeah,
to me, it's the success.
Sure,
it bothers me.
Innately, we hate people that do well.
Right.
That's just sort of, as sports fans, that's the way it is. But when you sort of pull back, there's other people that I could not like. But this guy,
it's like Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, well, Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, no, there's a lot of reasons why I'm out on that dude. But getting back to his dad bod, that's the one thing I would say about Patrick Mahomes. As great as he is, when you get to the other side of 30, that catches up with you. Like, there's a reason why Tom Brady was able to be successful and win a Super Bowl on the wrong side of 40. It's because of TB12 and being that freak about everything that goes into his body, having a dietitian that is on his payroll, the same with LeBron James and anybody that wants to extend their career. This is a real thing. So while it's cute now and somebody like me is buying in, look at the, Rolly quarterback who's got, a little love in there in the middle of his midsection. It's sort of a sticky thing that will prevent you from going to where it is that you want to go. When we project this guy out in terms of what it is that he could be when it's all said and done with. I mean, he's right on the heels of Tom Brady right now. Okay? And
come on.
If he wins another Super Bowl...
he's got 3?
He
already has 3, right?
Yeah, and so now...
Yeah, he has 3.
And Tom Brady never three-peated. I'm just saying he's closing that gap, and he's still got a lot of football left. But he's never going to get there if he's eating Twinkies and Ho-Hos every night.
I mean, not to compare the body types, but this is the LeBron James, Michael Jordan conversation of the NFL now. Brady has the rings, MJ has the rings, LeBron is great, and he also has some rings, but didn't beat Brady in the Super Bowl in 2020. And, I think the NFL is watching, the GOAT versus GOAT conversation kind of take place in front of us where, Montana and Brady never faced off. We got to see Mahomes and Brady go toe-to-toe for a couple of years in the AFC, and then in 2020 we saw what happened in the Super Bowl. So I think the NFL is watching the GOAT conversation kind of happen in real life, take shape, where we saw these guys face off and whatnot. But even Mahomes, I don't know, man. I just can't get behind it. He's a great quarterback. He can go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. I just can't buy in to what he's selling me. Whether it's the family stuff, whether it's the voice, maybe because he's so darn good, I just can't buy in. Like, whenever I see him, I just roll my eyes and I go, ugh, get him off my screen. Same with the Kelceys now, too. I cannot go a day in my life without watching television or a sports game without a Travis Kelce or a Jason Kelce appearance. I'm over it. I don't care. They're handsome, they're nice, they're fun-loving. I don't care. I don't want to see him anymore in my next hopeful 50-plus years of life. I'm done.
I
hate him.
I'm just looking up for the record. Hold on. So he has the 3 Super Bowls. Tom Brady has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Super Bowls. Well, we won 2002, 2004, 2005, 2015, 2017, 2019, 2021. Yeah, he has 7 Super Bowls. So he has the one with Tampa Bay because Belichick and company have 6, and he has the extra one. So Mahomes is halfway there. Now, the GOAT conversation is an interesting one. I think that Patrick Mahomes is the better quarterback, isn't he? I mean, Brady never,
physically, yes,
never did this stuff. Like, Patrick Mahomes is I think, to me, he's the greatest I've ever seen. I know we measure these things by Super Bowls. He's not even 30, so he's got, if he gets a couple more, I'm willing to say that's the greatest of all time, just because of everything else that he does. Tom Brady never made a no-look throw for a first down. Tom Brady never, and I know a lot of that stuff is for show, but just dropping down, throwing from different angles, the ability to run and we talk about making something out of nothing. And I know that, Patrick Mahomes is public enemy number 1, but I'm willing to go there and anoint him the greatest of all time a lot sooner rather than later. In other words, I don't think he has to get to 7 Super Bowls for me to come to that conclusion. Obviously, you don't feel the same.
No, it's the same thing with Rodgers, right? Rodgers gets the MVP. He wins 1 ring. What could his career look like? The arm talent, the no-look passes, the mobility. And Brady's like, yeah, okay, I'm still winning over you continually. And now Brady's retired and whatnot. But, I mean, people forget Tom threw 50 touchdown passes in 1 year, and him and Randy Moss had one of the greatest receiver quarterback years of all time. Like, Brady was elite of the elites amongst playing with Peyton Manning and Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers, and even later in his career, Patrick Mahomes. He beat Mahomes. Like, that matters to me.
He did. I want to say Mahomes was in his 2nd year in the NFL, or it might have been his rookie year when he lost that AFC Championship game, right? No.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I just think that what he's able to do is just Tom Brady was accurate, and Tom Brady needed time to do what it is that he did. As Patrick Mahomes is just sort of reinventing the whole sport. And I think opinions change that once, 10 to 15 years when we revisit this. I get it. Right now, he's a guy that's just a pain in the butt because he beats the 49ers and he's the best, and you have to deal with all of that. Same with Tom Brady. When Tom Brady was on top of the mountain, there were a lot of people that vilified him for just being Tom Brady and the perfectly coiffed hair and all that crap. So, I don't know. Does Brock Purdy eventually get into that conversation? I won't go there in terms of the GOAT, but as far as the 49ers are concerned, We got to get to a break. What the hell are you doing, Sterling? I was going to roll right through this thing.
It's my fault.
We come back. I do want to just dabble into the postseason, talk a little baseball, and also touch on the rest of the NFL. We continue after this.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising.
on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Oh, Al Michaels on the call. I love me some Al Michaels. He's a legend. And I think you got to give him his respect. That man, he called the earthquake game here during, obviously, the World Series in 1989, the Bay Bridge Series. You know, he won an Emmy for calling that earthquake game. Obviously, the earthquake takes place before the game between the A's and the Giants in the World Series in 89. He won an Emmy, but it wasn't a sports Emmy. He got a news Emmy for breaking news, which is really spectacular. But he's an absolute legend in the industry, but he's lost his fastball. Much like that of Bob Costas. You know, the hardest thing to do as a sportscaster, especially a legend like that of Al Michaels, knowing when to walk away and keeping the legacy intact, because he just is not the same dude. He has not aged well. No one does, right? Especially when you're a play-by-play guy, you got to recognize that you don't have it any longer. And as it pains me to say that Al Michaels, I grew up with this guy. It's Al Michaels, for crying out loud. But I think that, you know, listening to him, Bob Costas, who's getting a lot of blowback on the ALCS, or no, the ALCS hasn't started, but on the divisional playoffs and covering the Yankees and the Kansas City Royals. But, some serious gaffes on the part of Mr. Michaels the other night.
What did you make of Bob Costas? Because I know a lot of fans are calling maybe out his favoritism towards the Yankees throughout the series. Al Michaels, just an older guy, calling plays still. Going to be mistakes here or there, but it's one day a week, whatnot. It's not like he's doing the major primetime Sunday night football games anymore. But Bob Costas calling multiple games in a row. People felt like that he was hoping the Yankees would win that series over the Royals, which is not the job you're supposed to do in a playoff game, being the play-by-play guy.
Yeah, he had the wrong voice inflection, especially on what was that double play, started by Bobby Witt. I know was getting a lot of play. I don't think that he's smart enough, and he's still brilliant studio host. And I watch him on MLB Network.
Sure.
I just think that it's part of, again, just that he's lost it. He's a little bit older, and it's not that he has favoritism. It's just that he's not consciously aware of these things anymore. And that's just that's what happens as you get longer in the tooth and you get older and you do these things. You become susceptible to this sort of criticism. Whereas if he was on his game, he's not making those sort of mistakes. I don't think it's a personal interest that he wants the Yankees to win. I just think it's an oversight by an older man that shouldn't be behind the mic in a game of that magnitude anymore. So
it doesn't seem like play-by-play broadcasting has changed so much, but is there some of this new generational younger players watching games in a different way and wanting certain things out of their broadcasters and it might be a boring conversation to have on the air, but, do you think things have changed generationally that a person like Bob Costas, the way he calls games, really isn't, doesn't interest those of the younger viewers?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think that his pacing, the way he's calling a game, just his overall approach is something that has been good, but it's very 90s-esque. I don't think that he stepped into 2024, and there's a lot of young broadcasters that do it a different way, and they're throwing out, whether it's statistical knowledge, but they're part of that Gen Y, or they're part of the millennial sort of fan base that is now obviously targeted by the advertisers, and they're speaking, to their base, whereas Bob Costas is an older man trying to connect with people that are 20, 30 years younger than him in many cases. So I'm assuming you're out on Bob Costas in baseball.
Well, I think I'm indifferent. I think the Yankees always gave you that nostalgic throwback, the original baseball, right, where you don't mind having an announcer like Bob Costas call some games, but even then, like, people were criticizing Michael Kay during the Tigers and Astros series of, maybe showing some favoritism in that one, or just calling games in an awkward fashion where
he is the Yankee announcer. He's on the Yankee payroll. So
right. He is for sure. But even then, like I watched plenty of, Yankee broadcasts and Mets broadcasts, and, Ron Darling's out there doing his thing. And, I didn't think anything of it, but then Bob Costas, I was like, wow, I am bored out of my mind. Yeah. But I don't mind that sometimes. Growing up in the 90s and watching baseball in the early 2000s, like John Miller and Joe Morgan on ESPN's Baseball Tonight, like we watched it all the time growing up, and it was a classic. I love this kind of thing, the way they broadcasted games. And I think John Miller, for as old as he is, maybe he doesn't have his fastball anymore, but he still has that great changeup to throw you off your guard sometimes, adios pelota. But, I don't know, like my mind was so focused on Dodgers Padres that entire time, where it was like, I don't care what Bob Costas does, really. I don't care what Michael Kay does, really. My mind is just go Padres. Someone knock off the Dodgers. I can't stand this anymore, the way they win games.
Oh, and you're still alive because your Metropolitans are my Metropolitans. They're right for the job. As here come the and this, believe you me, I get it. There are a lot of Padre fans, and a lot of people want to see San Diego win. But if you're corporate America, meaning that if you're Fox and you got these games, the NL Championship Series being decided by a team out of Los Angeles and a team from New York, that's exactly what you want. That's the sweet spot. That's how everybody makes money. So they're still high-fiving one another, the suit and ties that are Fox, because that's the series that everybody wants. And I know that the Dodgers are enemy number one. There's something about LA. I think that when you spend that much money on your payroll, they get the best teams. They get the best players every single year. I just think that innately a lot of people are just going to hate on you. And that's sort of what's pervasive, I think, not only here in San Francisco. I don't think it's just relegated to the Bay Area, but I think throughout the entire country, they become public enemy number one. Of course, Shohei's going there. Of course, Mookie Betts is going to go there. And Freddie Freeman, oh, God. You talked about it, hating on
Can't cue up the crying video.
Oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. But that guy is just too perfect. And by all accounts, he's a really nice guy. So, that's part of the problem there as well. But it's going to be a fun series. By the way, Risotto, we got a new producer here. Steven Risotto, who I've had on the show before talking a little sports. Rosie, I know you know your baseball. Any thoughts initially on the Mets and the Dodgers?
So I have a question for you guys. What would be more insufferable? Would it be Mets and Yankees, so another Subway Series rematch, or Yankees-Dodgers?
I'd like to see Yankees-Dodgers just because I can go that far back in time and remember those series back when I was a child. So give me, again, I don't like it when the country is just when you siphon off the rest of the country. Yes, I know there'd be some rooting interest one way or the other when you get to the Mets and the Yankees, but you'd like to have at least both coasts represented. So if you're talking about that power out of the East Coast and the Yankees who are so divisive and the Dodgers who are also so divisive, to me, that has a lot more intrigue. And plus, I don't hate the Yankees as much as everybody else. I do hate the Dodgers, though.
It's a great question, Stephen, because yesterday I was with my wife driving her to her parents' house, and I told her in the car, well, growing up, I was taught two things in life. You hate the Yankees and you hate the Dodgers. You hate the way the Yankees buy players and try to buy championships, and you hate the Dodgers because you're from the Bay Area. And we were driving to my in-laws' house, and I told her, I go, if there's one thing in life I never want to see, it's obviously my wife and my dog passing away, but I never want to see a Dodgers-Yankees World Series matchup ever. I just can't do it. I can't stand it. And so I get it for baseball. It's great. Ohtani, Soto, Judge, these juggernauts on both coasts going head-to-head, but I'd rather see the Guardians, Tigers, or Mets playing in the World Series for my sake. I went to Azusa Pacific University in SoCo. Shout out Stephen Vogt, the alumni there. Hopefully he wins today and takes home the ALDS for the Cleveland Guardians. But my goodness, I wouldn't even watch a game.
Do you know who the most,
I just couldn't stand it.
The most popular and renowned football player is out of your program?
That's Christian Okoye.
Yes, the Nigerian Nightmare.
Nigerian Nightmare.
Worst hands in the history of the NFL.
Well, don't forget, Jackie Slater also coaches there.
Did he really? Oh, yeah, he didn't play there. Oh, okay.
No.
All right. But back to my man, Steven Risotto. It's almost as bad as Reardon versus SI. So I find out that Rosie here, went to Reardon High School, which, of course, I went to SI, so we used to just beat the crap out of them every year. But Rosie is actually representing the Crusaders of Reardon. So come in here. Let me get you in a headlock because I have no respect for Reardon people, Rosie.
So I am very disappointed to know that you are an SI cherry. We were talking before, but one thing that we do agree on is we both don't like Sarah.
That's true. There's something about Sarah. That's, of course, the alma mater of one Barry Bonds, going back in the days of Brian Jeffries, who came out of that program. By the way, so that's so funny because that was the first thing I was going to ask you as to whether they still refer to people from my high school as cherries.
They do.
And it was like a 4-letter word. Literally, you would get into a fight if you went to SI and somebody called you a cherry. And as I get older and I go to college and I'm thinking back, I'm like, what the hell is a cherry? It's like a piece of fruit and I'm ready to throw down. But that's so fun. Do you know, by the way, because I don't, the origin of cherries in SI?
I have no idea. I'd have to look into the archives of who might know something about that. But what I do know is that Reardon, we are the Rabbits.
You were the Rabbits,
Yes.
which I also don't know where that was derived from.
And I barely heard that in my 4 years there.
Yes,
So,
you were the Rabbits.
Yeah.
Was there a SH were the Irish, but I don't remember having any sort of a moniker or a name calling sort of edict that we
yeah, I think they're clean from this.
Yeah. Reardon. Wow. Okay. Now I know exactly who it is that I'm dealing with here. So
Well, next time I'll wear all my Reardon gear. I'll wear all my Reardon gear next time, and then you'll have to suffer.
What's interesting, is that, and there's like maybe 8 people in the audience that care about this that went to SI and Reardon, but I just got to tell you that Reardon, SI, and SH, we did not like Sarah. And granted, we were the 3 schools that were in the city, Sacred Heart, Reardon, and St. Ignatius. Meanwhile, you had Bellarmine down in San Jose. You had Mitty was also out in San Jose. And you had Sarah that was out in San Mateo. But Bellarmine used to kick our butt in football every year. They were just the powerhouse. Is that true for you as well, Rosie?
Yeah, they were very good. The schools down south were very good. St. Francis, you could throw them in that bunch too.
Yes.
Yeah, Valley Christian was good in baseball when I was there. And I don't know. Maybe it's just the I think there's a respect factor with Sarah, but I just think it's just hatred.
Yes.
Very hatred.
There was something about Sarah High School. I remember opening day. This is back when they would have opening day for the San Francisco Giants, and they would always tell you, Brother Draper would say, listen, I don't want excuses. It's mandatory that you be there because opening day would be in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday, and everybody would come in with illnesses or I can't be there. Half the student body would be, watching the Giants. And this back in the day, this is the stick. And so Brother Draper would say, listen, you're getting a week's worth of detention if you're not here. I need a letter from a doctor. So one year I happened to be at opening day, and there I wasn't sitting in the section, but there was an entire section in the upper deck at Candlestick, and it was nothing but blows. I mean, not just a row of people fighting, an entire section. We're talking over 600 people getting after it. And it turned out that it was Sarah and SI that went after it on a memorable opening day way back when Candlestick was the place where you would do that sort of thing. And, of course, nobody was paying any attention to the Giants because they were probably getting run 10-0. So there you go. A little knowledge for you, Rosie, as Reardon and SI. Where did you go to high school, Sterling?
I went to Berean Christian in Walnut Creek, so nowhere near you guys.
No, any knowledge of the school that Sterling went to, Rosie?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
We were playing the North Gates and the College Parks of the world. Valley Christian was on our radar for sure, but more so in the East Bay, never in the city.
Okay, that's why I never heard of him.
I'm thinking off the top of my head, the best athlete out of Reardon. I know they had like Steve Sewell, played for the Broncos back in the day, but who am I missing? Who am I overlooking here?
The big one that's always talked about kind of is Kevin Rastani, the NBA star.
Oh my
Kevin
God,
Rastani.
That's like from the 60s, right?
That's kind of a claim to it. There's a few football ones too. Trying to think off the top of my head, but we are.
Or the Jordans, Steve Jordan, place kicker, and Frank Jordan, I want to say, played at USC. They were guys that went to Reardon. They were this family of kickers that went to St. Stephen's, shout out, and they used to kick collegiately for USC in some big games.
Yeah, there's definitely a few others that have had college success, college football, college basketball, but we are known for for high school basketball. That is the Reardon way. That is the football program's kind of building up right now, but the mainstay at Reardon has always been basketball.
All right. Well, let's because I know you're a baseball. You're still writing for somebody. Who are you writing for?
A bunch of places, but most recently covering the Giants for SF Bay.
All right. Who's winning the World Series this year, and who's playing it? In all seriousness,
I think it's hard to bet against the Mets right now. They have a good thing going for them. It seems like the vibes are in their favor, and talking about what Major League Baseball wants to see, I think they like this NLCS a lot with the Mets and the Dodgers. And the two MVP, I know it was mentioned, Sterling, I think you mentioned the Lindor MVP train against the Ohtani MVP train, and that's going to be a fun matchup. But in terms of who's winning it all, I think it's got to be the Mets. They could outpitch the Dodgers in this series, and I think, let's say if the Yankees win Game 5 or the Tigers win Game 5, there's not enough there to match up with what the Mets have. So I think it's the year of the Metropolitans, and we'll see what happens.
Sterling, who do you like?
Selfishly, I want to say the Mets. I just have a hard time going against the Yankees. I don't think they're the best team in baseball this year, but I just think, what they have going, if they can get Judge going, you have him and Soto back-to-back. It is a nightmare for any pitching staff. I will say this, though. Wouldn't it be something to watch Giants legend Sean Manaea take down Shohei Ohtani? Wouldn't that be something to watch down in Chavez Ravine?
God, where did Manaea come from? Did you see him in his last outing?
He was great.
Oh,
He's great.
My goodness.
They got Kota Senga back. The Mets are feeling it, man. The vibes are good. Honestly, I don't care who wins as long as it ain't the Dodgers. That Mickey Mouse ring in 2020 doesn't count.
Yeah.
You hold them off. They pay all that money, deferred money for Shohei. You keep that man out of the World Series, that entire contract, I will be a happy, happy man.
It's going to be fun to see Shohei under the big lights, though, because that's the one reason why he needed to get out of his former team and wanted to go to LA is just for this very reason, is to see how he's going to respond. Because I want to say what this guy did this past year, I've never seen it before. It might be the greatest year in the history of a single player in a baseball season. So Shohei is good for baseball. I think that we would all agree with that. And the fact that he deferred the money, it's sort of tough to hate on him as well. But collectively, it's the Dodgers. So I'm with you, man. Right. I want to see them get spanked.
Where do you sit? Because when I hear Shohei, who had a phenomenal season, 50-50, just one of the greatest seasons of all time, as a Giants fan, that one irks me when I know a guy that was here in 2001 hit 73 home runs. And I'm like, that's the greatest season of all time. Like, the OPS is out of the roof. He had more intentional walks than most guys have hits in a season. Like to me, Bonds still has the greatest season of all time, but Shohei was great. But when I hear that, I'm like, do we forget what happened, 23 years ago?
Yeah, no,
it wasn't that long ago.
It's a really good point. I think that I hate to go there, but I think that the steroids and that dark cloud still hangs over his accomplishments, especially when it comes to that one season. And so whether it's accurate or not, I think it taints a lot of what it is that he did. And maybe it shouldn't, but I do think that that's, at least for me, that's the first thing that I think about when I think about that remarkable season put together by Barry Bonds. And what's really unfortunate is that the dude was just so amazing that year. Because remember, yes, everybody walked him, because why wouldn't you? For crying out loud, Bucky Showalter walked Barry Bonds with the bases loaded, saying, I'd rather give up a run than 3 or 4. He was that good. And the reason that you would walk the guy, because he would literally, if you didn't walk him, you were pitching around him. And so maybe
he'd walk anyways.
Maybe every at bat he'd get one pitch, like maybe one pitch that would be sort of hittable or in that zone. And I want to say that year, 85% of the time with that one pitch, he squared it up. It was ridiculous what it is that he did. And I think that he is one of the greatest, if not, he's in that very rarefied air. But I think that the stigma of what he did off the field and the performance-enhancing drugs that were alleged For crying out loud, the dude's head was growing at the age of 40. He had to get a new hat size. Him and Sammy Sosa is always going to be a mark on his house. And I think that when you have to compare the two, with Shohei's, as far as we know, is clean. And when you think about what it is that he just accomplished.
He had the gambling stuff.
Well, it was either him or his translator, right? Or did he? Are you still in the conspiracy?
We all forget what happened all 5 months ago during the season.
Are you not believing that Shohei had nothing to do with it? Because there's a lot of people that believe that much money comes out of your account and you had no idea. Yeah. They're not passing the sniff test there, are they?
I mean, it's certainly fishy. And obviously that doesn't change how you play on the field unless you're, pulling a Pete Rose and whatnot. But even then, I don't care Bonds took steroids, man. It was the greatest memories of my life watching him park homers in McCovey Cove, watching the chickens up on there on the cove because they walked him over and over again. And look, Bonds actually played the field, for God's sake.
Yeah,
I mean, Shohei's DHing every single night. I don't care what you do. We used to talk about how DHs didn't deserve the MVP, and now they're the greatest players of all time. Yeah. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Well, I think also what you have to factor into this, that he didn't do it this year, but the fact that he pitches, when he is in the field, is really just, the guy is just, and let's see where he's at next year when he takes to the mound, because apparently he's going to get the ball and try and be that guy again. So, yeah, I'm with you. I used to do a show out in Seattle, and you think people didn't like me here. Back in Seattle, I said Edgar Martinez, who is beloved out there. And I'm like,
one of the greatest DHs ever
is not going to the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry.
Man.
Your lumpy butt has got to get back to third base or first base. It had been so long, I don't even remember what position he played anymore. But the idea that you're on a stationary bike and watching the game down in the clubhouse on an HD screen while everybody's out there, tracking ground balls and walking down fly balls, it's just, you're a good hitter, but let's leave it at that. We'll give you the Silver Slugger Award, but we're not going MVP.
You want the Hank Aaron Award? Fine. You ain't getting the MVP.
I had the same issue with pitchers. Sterling, I don't know how you feel about that, but I was like, there's a Cy Young for you. And I know they'll always say it's sort of contradictory because good pitching beats good hitting, and pitching is so important to the game. But I always had an issue with them being the MVP, really. I mean, in one league, you're not getting to the plate, so this is before the DH was in the National League, and I'm like, how can you be the MVP if you never hit? We have an award. It's called the Cy Young, and we'll give that to you, but not an MVP.
And the game has changed just so much. Back in the day, guys were hitting 300 with 5 home runs getting into the Hall of Fame. It didn't matter. It was average and contact league. And even when the Giants are winning championships in 2010, 12, and 14, it was a pitching, defense, and contact offense. It didn't hit home runs, really. So the game has changed so much in a decade's worth of time that MVPs are winning, or DHs are winning the MVPs and are heralded as some of the greatest players of all time, which David Ortiz, all due respect, I'm wearing the hat right now for his career. Love those guys, but it's like, I don't know. Greatest season of all time, Barry Bonds has that in my case.
All right. That's certainly, there's a lot of people that would agree with you. All right, before we get to the break, we just got to clean something up. Somebody's jumping all over me because I ripped Bob Costas and then just went on a rant about SI and Reardon. He's like, good sports talk radio. Yeah, all right. You might have a point there. We continue.
Dan Devone, the Bob Costas, the 957 the game.
Yeah, we continue here on 95.7 the game. We'll get back to the 49ers. Also want to take a tour around the NFL and see what's what. Ooh. Sterling Bennett, Dan Devone. We'll close the show after this.
Did you know that most people wait 6
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
Wrap up the show. Sterling Bennett, Dan Devone. As we, before we get into the Niners and go back to the NFL, somebody in the text line wanted to talk a little Warriors. Sterling, any thoughts on the preseason? Are you feeling the Warriors? Is this going to be a new, improved, and a team that was better than that of a year ago?
I don't know. Maybe it's just my jadedness towards working the Warrior games the last 4 years where I'm just like, I don't care anymore. But no, for the sake of the fans, I mean, there's a lot to like. In a weird way, and people are going to hate this, I do think Clay leaving is almost an addition by subtraction. I get it. There's love there. We're always going to love Clay in the Bay, what he did for the team and the organization and what he means to the team. He's a legend in the Bay Area. Even last year, Captain Clay, all the things that maybe, didn't break his way. I just think that the emotions that were there, sometimes you can just get the sense that Clay's emotions were a distraction at times. This is Kuminga's, fourth year now? Big things got to happen. This is Moody's fourth year. Big things got to happen. I think getting Buddy Hield in there to be a bench player, what seems like, is massive for the bench unit. Gary Payton's finally healthy again, hopefully this year. There's a lot to like. I just think the West is stacked. And what they've done, I don't think is enough to, unless Kuminga takes a massive leap, a lot is still going to be on Curry's shoulders. I don't think they've done enough to take any pressure off of him. They're going to have him carry this team once again, which they're probably a better team than last year for sure, but I just don't think when they stack up in the Western Conference, they're going to be a top 8 team again.
How many times are we going to go into a season or talk about this during the offseason that Jonathan Kuminga's got to take a huge leap? Just, yeah.
That's your boy, though. Yeah. That's your boy.
I know, and I think he sort of leveled off after that second year, third year, but I'm waiting for it too. It could happen.
I hope so.
Yeah, he's so young that you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it's just so funny hearing you say that. Like, I think that, that's collectively everybody sort of feels that way. And it just seems every single year we're waiting for Jonathan Kuminga to take over the league. Here comes Jonathan Kuminga. Now we're going on year 4, believe it or not. So this could be. We'll see. I think what's interesting about the Warriors, so I have a lot of friends. I was talking to some friends yesterday at the Son at the Dolphin Club. Couldn't go through an entire show with not one reference to the Dolphin Club. So there were friends that were just saying, hey, I like the Warriors this year. And I guess they've opened some eyes and what's going on here in the preseason. They look good against Sacramento, shooting all those threes and hitting all those threes. It's got a lot of people excited about the regular season. Now they're going to – Steve Kerr said as much. We're going to shoot the 3. They've always shot the 3, and now they're going to shoot it even more. I mean, that's beautiful.
Live and die.
Yeah, well, that's Steph Curry. That's music to his ears. Are you kidding me? I think they're going to be entertaining as hell, and they always have been. But they're going to be so much fun to watch. But it's going to be sort of like a carnival act. They're going to be sort of like, it's going to be a circus. It's going to be, fun. Look at this team shoot threes. But when it comes to serious, do you have seriousness in terms of, do you have the foundation? Do you really have the players to win a championship? To your point, no. The landscape has changed. It's no longer their conference. They've given way to the Oklahomas of the world, the Minnesotas, the Dallases. You take your pick of 4 or 5 teams. And so for a team that was synonymous with NBA championships, a team that was synonymous with dominance and winning titles, the dynasty, so to speak, has now become sort of this act, if you will, where watch these guys step up and watch this team shoot threes like no one has ever shot them before. Come on, come all. Come see the Golden State Warriors shoot threes led by the greatest who's ever done it, Steph Curry.
Because, the Ringley brothers.
The flip side of that is that when you live and die by a 3, is that there's going to be nights when you, like they did in that preseason game against Sacramento, where it's fun and you roll a team by double digits, but then you live by the sword and you die by that sword because you're also going to be nights where you can't make a bucket. And when you're missing threes and that's all you can do and you're creating runouts the other way, that's going to be a long season as far as I'm concerned. And I know I have a tendency to be on, an island of one, but I just, this team is They're no longer the hunted. They're the hunters. They're taking on a whole nother role here where it's not a rebuild. It's not a team that's, they're not like Oklahoma of a couple of years ago when Oklahoma just clearly was in the midst of a rebuild so that they can get draft picks and put together the sort of dynasty that they are, or the sort of good team that they are right now. I'll stop short of calling them a dynasty until they win at least one title. But the Warriors aren't that. They're not a rebuild, but they're clearly in a transition here. I think we could admit that this is not a team that for the last decade plus, when we would sit here and talk about the Warriors, whether it was the preseason or handicapping this team, we would talk about them and their chances of getting back to the Western Conference Finals and winning a championship, as they did a couple of years ago against Boston. But now when we think about this team, we're thinking about a play-in. We're thinking about if they can capture a playoff series, that's a good season. The expectations have changed. The personnel has changed. And that foundation, the dynasty, so to speak, those core players are now, one is gone, and the other two are now in their mid to late 30s. So the entire complexion, the outlook in terms of the goals for this Warrior team going into a season have clearly changed because they're no longer that group. They're no longer the dynasty that was synonymous with NBA titles.
When go back to the three-point shooting, how many times last year did we say, just give me a 2? I just get in the paint and give me a 2, and they just couldn't do it. Sometimes they wouldn't choose to do it. So it's not to say don't be optimistic. I mean, who doesn't love to watch Stephen Curry and Draymond Green when he isn't getting suspended play basketball? I mean, it's awesome. And, Curry is the greatest point guard of all time next to Magic Johnson in almost everyone's estimates. So it's like there's reason to be optimistic. You can beat a lot of great teams if you can hit the 3. I think the Warriors will be relatively competitive this season. And if Kuminga and Moody can take the next steps, which fingers crossed, we've been waiting for a while, they're going to be fun to watch. They'll be more explosive. They'll run down the court. I think it was Kuminga that was talking when he said, like Steve said, be ready. It's going to be an up-tempo, high-energy offense this year, which is great to see because last year and the last couple of years didn't feel that way. So there's reasons to be optimistic. There's reasons to be excited, and selfishly, I'm just happy I don't have to work those damn Christmas games anymore. I mean, I get to be home with the family, wake up on Christmas morning and eat the biscuits and gravy, open the gifts, and watch all the Christmas movies again, not have to worry about, is Tim Roy connected and whatnot. But it's a fun time, Cam. Good luck.
Oh, Cam, are you the new Sterling?
That's Cam.
All right, Cam.
Yep, I'm running the Warriors games. I'm the network coordinator. The first game I ran, it was a doozy. It was a struggle. But then the second game, they had Grandy in here being like my Yoda on, just guiding me through. And then the third game last night, I went through it. Nobody here straight killed it. And then I see what Sterling was saying, because once you learn it and pick it up, it becomes natural. And I was like, wow, that was really easy. And I'm actually looking forward to doing more of the games, and I'm ready to see what happens.
Yeah, Sterling, any words of advice for my man Cam?
Tim Roy is great. RC will hold your hand. It'll be really, really fun. I'll tell you what, one of my best memories is watching that Warriors team win that finals against the Boston Celtics. Was there with Chris and Craig, who was there, and I'll tell you what, man, that was great for the fans, but working those things, the parade and stuff, it's magical to watch those things come together, to be there until 2 a.m. in the morning, catching flights at 4 a.m. to go see the now wifey in Southern California, man. It's a grind, but it's worth it. But I tell you what, man, working with Tim and James Kincaid, who I'm sure is crying in his morning beer because the Padres lost yesterday, and RC Davis is a really good time. They're all great people. But I tell you what, man, Warrior fans, for as the season didn't go their way last year, they are tuned in every single day. Post-game shows, pre-game shows, the game itself, the mornings after, it does not matter. Golden State Warrior fans are some of the most passionate fans in all of sports.
You know what I got to say to you and those people that worked or were intimately close to the Golden State Warriors winning that title against the Boston Celtics, especially all the fans out there? I'm going to quote Tony Soprano when he finally catches the guy that had shot his nephew, Christopher. And he gets the guy, and he's alone in a room, and this guy knows what's going to happen. and Tony is prolonging the inevitable and is giving him something to drink because the guy's so nervous and he's begging for his life because he just shot his nephew. And so Tony's giving him a Pepsi. He says, "That's all right. Relax. Drink your Pepsi." And so the guy's nervously drinking his Pepsi. And then Tony Soprano says, "Did you enjoy that Pepsi?" And the guy says, "Yes, thank you." Tony's like, "Good, because it's the last one you're ever going to taste." And then proceeds to shoot him. So when it comes to you Warrior fans and the Boston Celtics and that championship, enjoy it, because I think it's going to be a long time in between the next time you're dancing in the streets and celebrating down Market Street. I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're just witnessing a little transition here until the Warriors identify the next core or really put together what is going to be the semblance of another run at a Western Conference title and getting back in the conversation of being in the upper half of the West. But as of right now, they're going to be fun. They're going to be entertaining, but they're going to be more shtick than substance, I think, when you think about the Golden State Warriors and shooting threes this year. I do want to see the emergence of Trace Jackson Davis, who has become my favorite Golden State Warrior. I love that kid. Like everybody else. Podziemski's interesting. So who is your starting two guard? I'll give you three guys from which to choose.
Okay.
You got DeAnthony Melton, you got Buddy Hield, and I'm going to throw in there Moses Moody. Who is it?
Ooh.
And Podziemski obviously has his name in that hat.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that Steve Kerr has talked about Podziemski, even dating back to last year, obviously started a lot of games last year for this team. I think you have to go Pods. I mean, he knows the offense. He knows the way Steve Kerr wants to operate. He's a great defender, at least, getting steals and getting blocks last year. Like, he was an all-around shock and surprise for myself. But, if he can start and establish himself next to Stephen Curry in that backcourt, I mean, you have Moses Moody, you have DeAnthony Melton, you have Buddy Hield playing their roles on the bench. It only makes you deeper. The Pods can be either point guard, shooting guard. I don't know how you walked away from last year saying this kid has something special. I don't know how high the ceiling is for him, but he can do things and excel in a Steve Kerr-led Warriors team.
I'd like to see Moses Moody get that number 2 spot.
Okay.
I think that the one thing about this shooting the three and doing it without any hesitancy really benefits somebody like that of Moses Moody, because I think Moses Moody sort of part of his personality, because he's such a nice guy and he's a bit of an introvert, seems sort of on the quiet and the shy side, is that he's always looking to defer, especially if he's got Steph Curry out there, especially if he's got Draymond Green and Wiggins. He's looking to set up other guys. He's a hustle player that's going to get rebounds, and he'll shoot his if he has an opportunity. But now Steve Kerr is telling everybody, especially specific to that of Moses Moody, pull the trigger, young fella. Don't think about it. Just have it be habitual. Just let that be instinctive is the word I'm looking for. Just let it go. Shoot that basketball. Make your move and go. Shoot that three. And I think what Moses Moody gives you at that 2 spot, and I know there's a lot of Moses Moody fans out there, but I just think that when I think about him, I like big guards. I like big 2 guards. And so, he gives you a height, because you're a little bit smaller if you go Podziemski and Steph Curry in that backcourt. Right. And I think that Moody gives you length. I think he's a good defender, and he can shoot it. I think Moses Moody as that number 2 would be a lot of fun. Now, I think a lot of it depends on, who's your front court, because that hasn't been decided either. So it depends on if you establish your front court, then your back court sort of has to work in concert with the guys up front. So depending, I guess, a lot depends on who it is that's going to be the starting front court. So let's go there. I'm going Moses Moody at the 2.
Well, with Moses Moody, my biggest concern, and the reason why maybe I wouldn't lean towards him, is even last year when Moses was playing some of the best ball on the team, Steve wouldn't even play him.
Yeah.
Like, that's my concern of, okay, let's say Moody's more aggressive with the ball, shooting threes, attacking the basket, and isn't, deferring as much like Steve doesn't want him to. There's no promise Steve even plays him. And that's my biggest, if you want him to be aggressive and attack the rim and shoot the ball and pull the trigger more often, what if he does do that? And even if he plays well, is Kerr even going to say, okay, go out there and give me 17, 20 minutes a night? I don't know if Kerr will.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because either it could be feast or famine. I'd like to see him start, but if he doesn't start, he can get buried once again.
Right. They may not play at all.
Yeah, they got a lot, including Slow-Mo. They got a lot of guys that are in that similar sort of position and situation as like that of a year ago, where he just would get in the back of the line. Okay, but let's just, for the sake of this conversation, who is your starting front court? Because I don't know if any of this has been established. A lot of people say, well, Draymond Green definitely is going to be in there. I'm not so sure, but who do you like?
Oh, well, explain that first. Why would Draymond Green not be there?
Well, I just think that there's some belief that maybe Draymond is better coming off the bench, that you want to preserve him just because of the wear and tear. A guy who's now, I want to say, in his age 35 season, that Draymond might be better with that second unit. And that I'm not, I don't think it's going to happen, but I think Steve Kerr has intimated as much that he doesn't know, aside from Steph Curry, that anybody has really locked down a starting position. But I think that Draymond Green is going to be your starting 4, right? Then it becomes, well, then who's at the 3? And who's your starting center? Because are you going to put Kuminga at the 3? And if you do that, Steve Kerr doesn't like him playing the 3, especially if he hasn't established that he can shoot the 3. And Andrew Wiggins is probably better equipped to shoot or start at the 3. Does Draymond Green go back to this unconventional 5? So who is it? Who do you – I'll just tell you who it is that I like. Trace Jackson in the middle.
Okay.
Give me Andrew Wiggins. Yes, I'll roll the dice that Andrew Wiggins can somehow – be that guy of a couple of years ago, although I know he'll crawl into his hole at times throughout the season and be the disappearing act of Mr. Houdini. But I like Andrew Wiggins we got to rethink that. That means Jonathan Kuminga's not starting. Okay, let me redo this.
Right. It all hinges on Kuminga. Is Kuminga for your 4? And so let's say, for your sake, your lineup thus far is Curry and Moody. Do you go Kuminga because you want the explosiveness playing with Curry alongside him, which means then Draymond is your 4 and Looney or Trace Jackson is your 5? Do you really want to do that? Where's Wiggins going to play? Is he a bench player this year? You're paying him $26 million. He can't be a bench player for that.
Okay, let me redo this. I'm going to go Kuminga 3, Trace Jackson Davis 5, and then Draymond Green at the 4. Steph Curry the 1, and the 2, the off guard is going to be Moses Moody. Welcome to your 2024 starting lineup for the Golden State Warriors.
So your bench essentially is you have Pods at the 1 or Pods at the 2 coming off the bench?
Yeah, I feel good about him coming off the bench. He's not Chris Paul, obviously, but he has that sort of old soul about him where he'll calm things down, balance the floor, and he's able to connect guys. And
then you probably place in there Buddy Hield as kind of your sharpshooter off the bench, and you got Kevon Looney as the rebounder center. If that's the case, I don't hate that, but then you got to find room for guys like Gary Payton II. You got to find room for players like Kyle Anderson. Yeah. The Warriors, oddly enough, don't have maybe the star talent to take them to an NBA Finals, but they have a lot of veteran journeymen that can contribute off the bench and be pivotal role players for them. The issue is, you got to find room and time for all these guys because they're all going to want to play and they all can play well. I mean, even a young player like Kevin Knox, who hasn't had a great career thus far, former first-round pick of the Knicks back in the day, I'm sure Steve Kerr will find some way, and he'll probably have an affinity to play Kevin Knox at a time. We're all going to say, why isn't Moody playing? Because Knox is getting minutes, right? So they got this oddly loaded bench behind him. I just don't know how they're going to work their magic, but that's why Steve Kerr is a 4-time NBA champion as a coach and gets paid the big bucks. This is a roster full of stars and egos and a lot of bench players that, Kerr is going to have to press the right buttons. And dare I say, way more than last year, I think he has the ability, or at least has the people in place to push those right buttons more often than not.
Well, thankfully, a lot of this decision-making is taken out of the hands of Steve Kerr because GP2 will go down with an injury. Andrew Wiggins will disappear at some point where you're like, okay, whether it's personal reasons or what have you, he'll leave the team.
Yeah.
And so other guys are going to get an opportunity to play. But there's depth on this team. I think Kyle Anderson, some people have talked about how he should start. And listen, if Slow-Mo is starting, that says a lot about your basketball team because he is not a starter in this league. Buddy Hield I know people like Buddy Hield, but
Boomer sooner, baby.
Yeah, Buddy Hield is a guy. Is he an Oklahoma guy? Does he?
Oh yeah, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Was he with Calvin Sampson product?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Or is it Kelvin? So, anyways, I think that Buddy Hield is he's a guy that never plays on a winner. He's fun to watch, but he's just a guy he's a good shooter, but he's Buddy Hield at the end of the day. We know what Buddy Hield is. Buddy Hield isn't the difference between you getting to a title or is not that difference maker. He's another guy. Yes, he can shoot at 3, but he also has a lot of holes in his game as well. But he's going to be fun, and we'll see how he works out with the Golden State Warriors. I just, there's you need somebody who doesn't shoot the 3 that's going to step up and give you points the other way. That, I think, is going to go a long way in determining just how good or how far this team will go. And what I mean by that specifically is that if you're not shooting 3s well, how else are you scoring the basketball? Is Jonathan Kuminga able to slash and get to the rim? Is Andrew Wiggins, again, sort of that guy who is getting to the rim or hitting that little turnaround from 12 to 15 feet? There's got to be another way to score the basketball other than shooting the 3s. And my other big concern, just to oversimplify things, if Steph Curry, who is the only proven guy that's going to give you 25 to 30 a night, is not scoring, and just keep in mind, I hate to go here, he has played so much basketball, including what happened in Paris and the Olympics, that if this guy blows a tire or goes down with an injury, as he has been prone to do, although last year he played his most games since I want to say 2016, if he's not available, who scores the basketball consistently for you for the Golden State Warriors in 2024?
Well, I think right there, your biggest concern is kind of what you were hinting at in your first point of the 3 position. Small forward is the most pivotal position on this team. It has 2 players that are the ones that maybe aren't the best 3-point shooters on the team, but they're the ones that can cut to the basket the easiest. Kuminga, I think, is the most important player on this team. Andrew Wiggins is, depending on where he plays, in regards to starter or bench, might be the most important role player on this team. If those 2 guys can give you something, if Wiggins can go back to a 15-point-a-night guy and Kuminga can transcend where he was last year, you're going to win more games. You're going to be a more versatile offense. So Kuminga and Wiggins are the 2 most important players on this team, not named Stephen Curry. And that's what it was last year, and it didn't work out. There was some bright spots, but ultimately you fell short of your goal. You lost 2 playing games in a row. It was night for the season. So, this team is going to have to find a way to operate when Steph's not working, when maybe he's having an off night, which isn't common at all. But Kuminga and Wiggins are this team's 2 most important players going into 2024, by far.
All right. Well, it's a good time to be a sports fan. Postseason baseball, there's nothing like it. It's why Buster Posey and company got to get the Giants back into October and playing significant baseball games. The Warriors right around the corner. NBA is here. And, of course, the 49ers, we're getting knee-deep into the season, and the Sharks and the NHL doing their thing as well. For my man, Sterling Bennett. Sterling, by the way, get back to that town of yours, population 14.
Witness protection. Don't tell anybody, Dan.
Sterling Bennett, and, of course, my man, Rosie Risotto and Cam. This is Dan Devone. Until next time, enjoy the rest of the weekend. So long, everybody.
So what are you reading?
I'm checking out the ratings on the new TVs, and it looks like